pipe and steel. I'm a criminal.
And hello. All right. Well, we should be live now. I still need to figure out how to do the dang hide a picture thing before the intro and right after. I have not figured that out yet.
Where you drag it, or you're trying to overlay it?
I don't know what I'm doing. I got to talk to somebody. That's in most things in life. I got to talk to somebody more experienced than myself. But hello, everybody. Good afternoon. And thanks, everybody, for joining me. Wow, we've already got a whole whopping 6 people watching live. And that's perfectly fine with me. So to everybody in chat, I see Diane, Cashew, Sherry, Pat, Bigfoot Lake. Hey, how's it going? Flat Rock. Hey, if I missed anybody, I apologize. So we've got the one and only William Lunsford today. And if you don't know who Will is, you really need to go back and look up some of the other episodes that he's been on where he goes into detail about his very first encounter and how he got into all this. But anyway, I will let him tell you the details of all that. So let's bring out Will. There he is.
Hey, everybody. Glad to be here with you. Thank you, Spencer Misty, for having me on here. I've been looking forward to this. Been trying to get over COVID so I'd have enough voice to do this. So, man, I've looked forward to it. To the folks that may or may not recognize me, I am from Texarkana, Arkansas, a twin city, and I have been a Bigfoot witness for 45 years. And I try to spend at least 5 days a week out in the woods looking for Bigfoot. And it's been a very rewarding thing for me. I've had several encounters. Like I said, I still people that say, well, there's just no way. All you have to do is get out there in the woods, and when you do, the sightings happen when you least expect it a lot of times. But the creatures are real. This is my passion. My wife actually Bigfoot researches with me. My son Bigfoot researches with me, and I have 5 or 6 other people that research with me. And all of those, man, they're really smart individuals. They make me appear smarter than I am, but they're very, very good in doing that. And like I said, I talk to people. I've interviewed probably 225 people now or more than that. And I have probably 10 people a week that will contact me and say, hey, Will, I have a Bigfoot here, or something or other. I've got this happening in my house. What can you tell me? And so that's my whole purpose in doing this. I'm not monetized. I'm just a regular old Southern guy, man, but I do enjoy this. And whenever you get that first sighting, that's how I became a researcher. I got hooked on that one deal right there because I'm like, shoot. So I didn't think I'd ever see another one. Well, then about 8 years later, I see another one. And so when I do, I'm like, man, these things are in the same territory I am. And so I'm going to learn something about them. Now, I tried a little bit back in 1977, my first sighting, and there wasn't very much to learn. But about 1985, when I had my second sighting, there was a little bit more. And so I've gone with that. And UPS man, this is just part of my biography here, from UPS man for 35 years. And so I got to that. They gave me an avenue to go through and talk to other people. And you would be surprised at how many people would go ahead. And at first they were kind of, back then, when I first started, it wasn't as vogue as it is nowadays to talk about Bigfoot. But now, like I said, through the different podcasts I've been on, I was in the movie Boggy Creek Monster. I did a show not too long ago with the Travel Channel called These Woods Are Haunted. I was in the Finding Bigfoot episode of Return to Boggy Creek. And like I said, I'm in the woods about 5 days a week looking. I'm retired now. And man, it's one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. It's not an absolute science, but about the time you think, oh shucks, I need to just go on home, I got supper ready, and all of a sudden you're driving down the road and he walks out across. So again, it's one of those real interesting things that I've started doing, and there's no way in the world I could walk away from it. I'm 63 years old, and if the Lord lets me live to 163, buddy, I'll be out there with a cane or with a wheelchair, but I'm going to be there. But anyway, I'm very glad to be here. I appreciate all the people that are here talking to us. Even though the numbers are big or not big, I'm telling you what, I'd rather talk Bigfoot than eat when I'm hungry. And so anybody has any questions, you can look me up on Facebook, just on my account. I don't have a page, but I'm just there. So, and when I'm not in Facebook jail, then I love talking to people. And I have a bunch of pictures. Some of them will upload, some of them won't, but I'll be glad to, if they generally send better through the cell phones than they do through the computers. I'll be glad to send people some pictures if they want to. And just really, really enjoy this. I've been looking forward to this. And so if you guys have anything you want to say, thank you. Let me say thank you to our service people and to our policemen and our first responders, because, man, we get to do what we do because they do what they do. And that's a big thing with me right there. If it wasn't for that, we would even, I've probably talked to 25 people in the military that have actually had Bigfoot encounters, a lot of them around Fort Lewis, Washington. And, some of the different air bases and stuff. I have one friend down there at, what town? It's Killeen, Texas, down there, and they have Bigfoot right around their place. So to get to hear from them and the things they do, and like I said, so I want to give them our thanks too. So here we are for being able to do this because they do what they do, and I appreciate y'all for that. So go right ahead, guys. That's about all there is about me. I'm not very good at talking about myself. There's not a whole lot much more to learn. Now, if I make my wife mad, she'll tell you a whole lot more. But other than that, she like I said, she's super. She actually helps me get this stuff done. I'm not very computer literate, but she's she's one of the best Bigfoot callers you've ever seen, and she seems to have a knack with the female Bigfoots. With they've got kiddos or whatever, she'll make a call, and before you know it, you'll generally hear one down there walking around or standing out there in the woods looking at her. So anyway, that's one of those things. You ladies, Bigfoot. They're like me and Spencer. They appreciate a beautiful lady. So anytime you have women out there, you have an advantage because Bigfoot is really interested in ladies. They're also interested in children, and there's a lot of scary things about it. You see a Bigfoot looking at your children or some kids there, you tend to anything we don't understand, we call them monster. But so far, I've only had 2 violent encounters in 45 years, and so they're not monsters. They're actually like a family unit of whatever these creatures are. But like I said, they've been very patient with me. I've stood there looking at Mama one time. She had 2 babies. We sit there for 30 minutes, and she never even gave us a growl or anything else like that. So again, like I said, these are very, very interesting animals, and I'm glad to talk to anybody about them. And so like I said, if you have any questions or anything like that, get with y'all, or get with me, and I'll be glad to do that. So I'm gonna turn it back over to y'all. That's all there is about my bio right there.
Well, great day. That fill up the whole show right there. We can stop it right there.
When you're in the woods like that, as many times as I am, I said, things are going to happen to you when you least expect it. My first encounter, let me get with that. Let me kind of give everybody a background. If you've never seen my shows or anything like that, you can go on there and you can look on Google. Now, I didn't put these there. Somebody else did. I'm not an egomaniac. But it'll say William Lunsford Bigfoot, and it'll show some of my recent podcasts. It'll show some that are better, maybe some that are not so good. But there's a lot of podcasts out there that will tell you the background of the things that I have done. And I try to at least do maybe 2 shows a year with most of the hosts here to kind of keep them posted in what I'm doing. And so hopefully we can do that with y'all. But it's one of those things that I was in 1977. Now I have my first encounter and kind of how I got started. I was a senior in high school, and I was a teacher's aide. And so every day, whenever I would get through with my stuff, I had 2 hours of teacher's aid. Well, he would let me grade papers, and when I got through, I could go down to a place called some gravel pits that I would go down and fish. I love to fish. And so one day I went up there. He was out of town. He said, "Yeah, man, just grade the papers and get gone." So I do, and I get head on down there, man. Like I said, the highway is about to curl up behind my car, so I can get down there so quick, and do some bass fishing. And so this place where I go, it's a series of what they call borrow pits, where you get gravel, dirt, and everything else like that to build the roads. And so when they get through, they tend to leave them in the shape they were, and nature tends to reclaim them. And so it becomes good habitat for ducks, for all the small game, the other waterfowl, for places for deer, for fishing and things like that. And man, I grew up there. I have been fishing there for at least for my full 17 years with my dad. And so it was really, really a place that was very, very special to me. And then this day I was down there, and so I had walked down there. I had to cross a creek across this creek. And then after that, man, I'm into my first 3-pound bass. So I didn't have as much time. I only had about 2.5 hours to 3 hours every day. So as I'm down there, I'm heading to a place we call the Crossroads. Well, about 2 weeks before then, I was down at the Crossroads. I'd lost one of my favorite lures in one of those pits, so I went back to get it, just had a little bit of time to kill, so I went in there. So as I get my bait back and catch a few fish, and then I go to head back towards town, I'm walking down this gas line, and when I do, I notice there's something that's pacing me over there to the side, and I thought, well, man, that's kind of strange. Of course, a lot of times your imagination will run wild. Sometimes it's daggum sparrows that are bouncing through the leaves, and you feel like a big idiot, as far as that goes. But so I hear the thing walking along there, and so I stopped, and when I did, it stopped. And I thought, oh, that's kind of strange, and sit there for a minute, never moved. So I started off again. Pretty soon, it's beside me again, over walking through the wood line. Of course, I'm thinking it's not uncommon, to have coyotes or anything else like that. They're kind of going through there, and they're kind of interested in you. They know I'm not supper, but nevertheless, they'll follow you around there. And so it starts right there beside me again. And so it kind of makes me uneasy. So I stopped again. I got about 2 or 3 more steps, and whatever it was stopped. But it was a whole lot heavier than a coyote, sure a whole lot heavier than a sparrow. And so I thought, man, that is strange. But so I went ahead and I kind of speeded up my walk a little bit, kind of almost into a jog. And when I did, pretty soon this thing's beside me, and it's going pretty well, except it's not jogging, but the footsteps are just whoom, 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 whoom. So I took off kind of on a dead run. I thought, well, I'll just see what this thing is. I get to a creek that I had to cross. And when I get to this creek, right as I started disappearing to the woods, you go to where there's a little ford that you could go across. This thing screamed at me. And I mean, it was not just a scream like somebody scared in a movie house. This is a scream that where you're in my territory and you probably need to leave. I mean, it was just like this. It was just, I mean, your clothes vibrate, the whole woods, everything after that, everything just shut down. So, man, I ran on down to the place I crossed, went back across, got to my vehicle, looked around, there's nothing there. And I thought, well, whatever it was, you dodged a bullet. Thing about this, I said, there's a lot of wildlife. I've got snakes. I've got all the venomous snakes except for the coral snake down here. I've got all brands of rattlesnakes. I've got cottonmouths, copperheads, and as I'm running, I'm just not worried about them guys because I realized whatever it is over there that was hollering at me and was pacing me was a lot bigger and probably be a whole lot worse. So anyway, I'm like, well, shoot, nothing there. So I thought, well, maybe I knew it wasn't my imagination. I thought, well, we've dodged a bullet. So I come back again those 2 weeks later, going down there. And when I get down there, I smell this real nasty smell. I had smelled it that day also when the thing had screamed at me, but I was used to a bunch of roadkill. I was used to a bunch of dead fish. I was used to a bunch where some of the other predators in the forest, had left their meals undone and stuff like that, and or something had interrupted them. So it wasn't that strange to smell that nasty smell. This smell was really rancid and putrid. So again, when I'm back about 2 weeks later, heading down there and I'm catching fish, and so I noticed the smell, but I keep on going, And since nothing had happened the week before, I'm like, well, that's cool. But whenever I had that thing scream at me, I went home that night and bought me a Bowie knife. I couldn't afford a gun, but I bought me a Bowie knife. And I thought, well, I'll take care of whatever that is, man. Like I said, you're 17, you're bulletproof and just plenty stupid. That's all I'm gonna say. For me to think I had that knife, I guess I've been watching too many Tarzan movies or whatever it was. But I thought I had, kind of protected myself a little better than I could. So anyways, I get to this place called the Crossroads. The smell is really bad. And usually you could look down this crossroad. If there were deer, they'd be down there. But this time there was no deer. And I could see this shadow on the left-hand side of this road there. And as I'm walking across there, didn't ever notice the shadow being there before, but I didn't pay much attention because I was ready to go. Had a few more gravel pits to fish. So, but anyway, something just wasn't right, Spencer. So I sit there and I stopped and I looked. I wanted to take a step, but something just said, man, you just need to just wait a second. So finally, I'm like, man, you're being silly. You're having flashbacks from last week and there's nothing there. Well, so I started to walk across. Well, when I did, this shadow that was over there, but it stood up. And whenever it got to probably about 6 feet, it had a limb in front of its face. The limb went to here. It continued to stand. And it was probably 7.5, close to 8 feet tall, solid black, maybe just a tint, maybe of shading, or that could have been from the sun. But it walks out and to me in front of where the road that I was walking down, and it gets right in front of me. There's nothing in front of me. It's maybe 40 to 45 yards. And there's nothing in front of me but just air in this creature. And I'm like, oh my gosh, first thing I think is bear. Even then, that's bad enough because, with a Bowie knife, you're not going to do a whole lot. You're not going to switch him with a rod and reel or anything else like that. But I had the knife, and so I pulled it out, sit there. So it begins to sit there and stare, and I thought, well, crap, that's not a daggum bear. And then I thought about maybe a sloth. Well, we don't have sloths here in Arkansas, and that I know of, we may not have it in the United States anywhere. So I thought, well, shoot, man, what is that? I knew it wasn't anybody down there messing with me because I was about a mile and a half away from where my vehicle was through the woods. And like I said, you had to cross these creeks, and if they had a little suit on, it was going to get wet. They weren't going to have a good time doing that. It was hot and it was muggy. So anyway, I'm sitting there watching this thing, and like I said, it's just staring at me. Man, pretty soon I get really uneasy. I'm like, man, this is how I'm going to die. Whatever this thing is. Now, I didn't believe we have a creature where I'm from in Texarkana. It's about 20 miles away, and there's a creature called the Fouke Monster. And it was the subject of a movie that they put out called The Legend of Boggy Creek. Back during my high school days, it was on just about at every drive-in that you could find. But The Legend of Boggy Creek was at first I thought it was just the silliest thing in the world. There wasn't any such thing. I wasn't arrogant, but we had things around our house when I grew up on a farm, and I actually heard people talking about things like that, but I just didn't believe it. Well, anyway, this creature right there, I found out right then he was real. I didn't believe him, but I knew right then, with him being 7.5 foot tall and looking at me, and like I said, they like to teeter from one side to the other, just kind of looking at you just like that right there, almost like he's keeping a rhythm. And I'm like, oh, shoot, this is it, And I thought, well, man, just, if I'm going to die like this, just let him find my body, and God be with my mother, to help her deal with stuff. So he walks back to this tree again. Off this road, he grabs the limb, he pulls it down, he skins the cat, gets the leaves, and he walks back again. So this time he's got a little more serious look on his face because I didn't run, I guess. I wanted to run, guys. I really did, but I just couldn't do it. I mean, I was just locked. And it wasn't fear. It was actually just terror because I didn't know what I was looking at. Didn't expect it to be real. And all of a sudden it's real standing in front of me. What do you do? There's not a textbook to go to. Okay, what do you do when you meet Bigfoot? Hey, do this. No, you're standing right there looking. So again, he's sitting there teetering and from that one side to the other and looking at me, and his eyes are just really black. The head is kind of cone shaped there, really, really broad shoulders. And the face was much like a gorilla. And so as I'm sitting there and he decides, you can kind of tell he's getting antsy. I sure am. Like I said, I'm crying, I'm hyperventilating and everything like that. And so he goes to take a step. Well, I thought he was going to step towards me. He stepped and he just wheeled on his left foot and took 2 steps. And by the 3rd step, he was in the woods there off of this logging road. I couldn't hear him no more. I couldn't see him no more. But like I said, by then it was just deathly quiet after that. And it wasn't that way beforehand. I'm like, oh, shoot, man. So I stood there and looked around. I thought, what are you going to do? I could swim. I could run the mile, a very good miler. And I thought, I'm going to have to do one of the two. Now, what am I going to do? So finally, my wits came to me and I thought, well, if you're going to do something, you better do it now just in case he changes his mind. So anyway, I took off running, got back to my vehicle after that mile, quarter mile and a half run, and threw my knife, my tackle over the gate, jumped through, got into my vehicle, getting ready to leave, and look, there's all my tackle and my knife outside. I'm like, oh, well, shit, because this tackle was given me by somebody really somebody special to me, and they had worked a part-time job just to get this. It was really expensive. It was probably, back then, it was probably about a $125 rod and reel. Well, man, that's nothing nowadays. I've got rod and reels here cost $500 or $600. I do a lot of fishing, and I'm a cheapskate. I buy the stuff that you find at garage sales and in pawn shops and everything else too. But this was really important. I drove up there and I got it and I threw it into my passenger seat, and then I got back to Texarkana. And so again, I told my mom, and as soon as I got there, man, she's like, "So what's wrong with you?" And I said, "Mom, you're not gonna believe me, but I saw the Fouke Monster." And she just kind of chuckled a little bit. She said, "The Fouke Monster?" I said, "Mama, I saw the Fouke Monster." Well, my mom, yes, I've got a note here. It says, "William, you've had sightings. I'm curious, you find a lot of tracks too." This is Sherry. Yes, let me enter this while they come up here, if you don't mind. Yes, Sherry, I do. I do find a lot of tracks. I especially find a lot of tracks in February and March and April, and then again in October and November. November maybe more so because I do deer hunt. But other than that, I think that's when they're really aggressive. So, or they're more active, not necessarily aggressive, but I think that has a lot to do with the deer stuff. So I do. And when you find tracks like that, sometimes I've got the longest I've ever found. I found 2 different tracks that were 22 inches long by 11 and a half. And man, that's a big foot. And everybody says, well, that's the name of the creature. And actually, no, when you see it, it puts you in your element. You're not the king of the woods anymore. You're not the top of the food chain. So I do find those like that. And I actually have I have not talked to everybody in the world, but I've been told by everybody that does Bigfoot research, I actually have the smallest track in the world. I have one that's 3 3/4 inches long, and I've got it casted. And this was there's a mom that we had caught walking by our cameras, and she had this baby up on her shoulder, And so there was a water puddle right there. And so it looks like she had set it down. So here's this smallest track. So I find them, most of the tracks I find will be 16 and a half, 16 to 16 and a half by about 8 to 8.5 inches, something like that. And that seems to be the standard footprint for this area that I live in. But so anyway, I get back up there and I tell my mom, and she says, son, I believe that you saw the creature. She said, I just don't believe I'd tell a whole lot of people. Well, that right there was good advice, but I'm 17 years old. I'm scared to death. I need a support group. I need somebody to say, hey, Will, you saw what I believe it. Well, I told my best friend, and he laughed like crazy, and he goes, man, I know you saw something. I know you very well. He said, you ain't, somebody to act like that. I said, I was 6'2", 240, fixed to play college football. I wasn't afraid of a whole lot. And so he said, I know you saw something, but you didn't see the foul monster. And like I said, my mom, like I said, she believed me, but then, like I said, that was good advice not to tell. Well, then I told my coach, and he goes, man, I've been working you too hard, hadn't I? And so I had a good laugh after that. So I just quit telling people because it wasn't worth the ridicule. And I didn't take ridicule very, very, very well, like most people don't, especially in something like this. But if I was going to lie about it, I learned one thing, that this is not something you lie about thinking you're going to get good publicity, because you don't. The publicity you get as a rule from this stuff is generally tends to be on the sarcastic side, or most of the time that people tend to disavow what you say. But I'm here to tell anybody here before I finish anymore here, Bigfoot is real. I've seen a bunch of them. I've actually taken people who've actually got to see them, and it's actually changed their life just like it did mine. So Bigfoot is real, and it's not just here in Arkansas. It didn't start in Washington. It didn't start in Oregon. It didn't start in California. The first sighting that I read, that I've looked up, was in Natchez, Mississippi in 1721. Man, that's a long time ago. And if you guys want to look it up, it's in what's called Charlevoix, Louisiana. And it was a man who was from France over there. And then, let me read this, please. William, after that encounter, do you still have the same feeling now, or do you feel more at ease? I'm more at ease because I have seen more. The first time I didn't believe in it, so I didn't know what to do. And I was really scared. I mean, really scared. When I tell you scared, I mean scared. I ended up wetting my britches that day. And I was, like I said, I was pretty well potty trained at 17. But what Bigfoot can do, they have what's called infrasound, and they can actually control some of your body, or make some of your body functions where you don't have the control. And so I think that's probably what it was, because I wouldn't leave. He just kind of, what we call in the Bigfoot realm, zapping. We kind of zap me. And so yes, but they do. I'm a whole lot more at ease. I actually go into the woods expecting to see a Bigfoot. I have about 6 different areas. I've got about 6 other different people that go with me that they have had encounters also, and they're very, very good men, smart men, family men, religious men, and like I said, they just as good as gold. I could count on them to support me with anything. So that's a lot of, and plus I said with my wife and my son. But these things are just they are real. I promise you, they're real, and there's more people that have sightings, and that's what I learned at UPS. I would be talking to people, and I would joke around stuff, because I was going to ask a question. I mean, I'm not ashamed. It ain't going to make me no difference if you laugh at me or not. But I would go up to somebody, I'd be at their house delivering packages, and say, "Boy, you live so far out in the country that if Bigfoot don't live out here, it's because it's too far for him to walk." And we'd all laugh and we'd chuckle and have a good little spin like that. But then every now and then you get somebody who'd say, well, especially like one lady lives up here about 20 miles from me. She goes, well, if you think that's so, you need to be around here around dark. And I said, well, I'm afraid of the dark. And she goes, well, you should be. I'm like, oh, I got to find out more about this. So she welcomed me to come back, when I could, but I never did go back to her house. Just strictly, I don't want to make a nuisance out of myself. I will if I have to, but she was very, open with me about some of the things she had seen. And so that's kind of how it is right there. So I would get that. Like I said, you see what I've got? I've got right here. I've got this. My friend is Keith Crabtree. He played the creature in the movie The Legend of Boggy Creek. Well, Keith and I are good friends, and I really have a whole lot of respect for Keith. And the man, without him playing the creature the way he played it in the movie Legend of Boggy Creek, we wouldn't be sitting here, because there was a Legend of Boggy Creek too, and it was pitiful. Man, the guy that played that, man, you may as well got one of the Three Stooges out there, because it was not credible the way that Keith played it. And of course, Keith is kin to all the Crabtrees, if you've heard the Crabtree reports and stuff like that. But then I would start wearing shirts like this right here, and then every now and then I have one this year back in April. Same time I have, I'm gonna show a picture. Y'all show a picture in a minute of a 10-footer, and it was the about a day and a half after that, and I had on a Bigfoot shirt down there in Vivian, Louisiana. Of course, Vivian is a whole lot of, swampland and stuff like that. And there's a lot of creatures in Louisiana. And this one guy came up, he goes, "Man, I love that shirt." And I said, "You a Bigfoot believer?" He goes, "Oh yeah." He said, "I've got them around my house." So we had a little chat, and so it opened up a door for he and I to become friends. We're friends on Facebook. I've got a license plate on front of my truck there. And so it's a white, it's got the black Bigfoot shape. I've got a couple of Bigfoot that I've had to cut out of metal and put onto my gates, and I'll have a lot of people, that come up here and say, "Hey man, where'd you get those at?" Well, I drew that from memory. "You've seen Bigfoot?" And then here we go. So like I said, made a lot of good friends. But Bigfoot is a subject that is really, really, there's more than one species. They don't all look the same. They don't all have the cone heads. I used to think they did. They don't all have the cone heads. They're not all black. There's a whole bunch of variants in the way, just like people, in the way that they look. Not all their footprints are 16 inches. When I found those 22s, I like to had a fit because I was about 40 or 50 yards from my truck, and I had left my pistol sitting in my front seat. And I'm like, well, I don't know how fast I can still run, but we fixed to find out, because I went back to get my pistol, and it was right there by where 5 hogs had been killed and piled up right there. And so I found there about 2 days after I found those, found another where the Bigfoot had come in and actually picked up one of these 300-pound hogs and just took off with him. So
wait, you got to go into detail on some of this. First of all, you need to be on every single show with me from now on, because I won't have to talk at all.
That's true.
And that would make Misty happy as hell. But hold on. So first of all, you found 22-inch tracks. I found that's a big track.
Man, it's a huge. Get it a yardstick and look and see just how big 22 is, and you look at that, and we're talking about toes that are probably 2.5 inches wide and maybe 3 inches long on the end of these footprints right there. And with that first 22 I found, there was another creature with it that had some 19-inch footprints. And then this one that we saw this year up there, it's 10.5 foot tall every bit. And because I went back with a meter stick and actually put up in the tree that he was standing behind. And this one has got 22-inch footprint. And man, I mean, it sinks into the ground probably 3 inches. And I'm still probably 265 or 270 pounds. And I barely even make any kind of indentation into it. So, but yeah, I love to talk about this. But anytime you guys want to stop me, because we'll go again tomorrow afternoon if y'all want to or whatever.
Hey, you're the perfect guest. I mean, we don't have to ask questions. I mean, you're answering stuff that I'm wanting to ask. So, hey, you just keep going. You're doing great.
What I do, I want to tick off something. First of all, let me say this again, just so everybody's on the same page. This show, this channel, is not for people to come on here and attempt to prove to us that Bigfoot exists. No. If you're watching this show, I'm not going out of my way to prove that Bigfoot exists. That's not what this is about. This is for people that have had experiences or do the research, and we already, either believe or know that Bigfoot exists. So what I like to do is I really want to take these people like Will, who have had this amount of experience, and I want to drill down on the details of what they've gained. I mean, he's been doing this for, what'd you say, 30 some years now? Almost
45 years. 45 years, 1977.
So all right. Number one, do you think boogers are, what do you think that they are? Just what's your opinion? What do you think they are?
Well, that's so hard to tell there, because without any DNA, credible DNA, it's not like going and looking up a DNA test or for a paternity test. The DNA you have to do is expensive, and you have to have a pretty good sample to go through it. I have seen some, like I said, that look like an ape. I've got we all three talked about a footprint a while ago. I told y'all that I found on the banks of Little River, Arkansas. The tracks I found, somebody just sent me a question, where did I find the 22-inch tracks? I found some of the 22-inch tracks up there about 30 miles from Mena, Arkansas. And then the other ones I found right down there in the middle of the Sulphur River bottoms where the Legend of Boggy Creek creature lives. And so those are two different creatures. They weren't the same ones. And so that's where I found those jokers at. But when you look at 22 inches on there and you just see just how big it is, you realize that you're just you're back there just basically you're here by the grace of God because if he wants you, he's going to get you. And if he wants to hurt you, but it's not. So far, it hasn't been that way. And that's what I want to do. Like I said, I want to share with what I've learned here with people because says, have I seen anything besides Bigfoot? Yes, Sherry, I've seen what's called a gugway, which is maybe either a species of Bigfoot, but it's the kind that has the dog type snout to it. And they're very, very aggressive. And this one, actually, I saw him running across there's an Oak Flat this year. It was on March the 1st, I think it was in 2000. And so he was running across there, and I thought, well, man, there's a big old hog. And of course, man, I'm going to stop and look at a hog. I'm going to stop and look at anything that's wildlife. Well, anything, he's on all fours, and he's running on all fours, and he is booking. And he gets up there to about 40, 45 to 50 yards away, and then he stops and starts walking along and then looking at me just sideways like that right there. And I thought, that's a Bigfoot. So anyway, I generally carry a pistol. I don't carry a pistol to kill Bigfoot. I carry a pistol to kill these blasted hogs, snakes, and panthers, and anything else to decide it wants to get with me. But so anyway, I run down this little trail right there and start running towards where he went into this brush pile. And so whenever I get down there, I'm looking, and all of a sudden there he is. He's behind this brush pile, just hunkered. And there's like some what's called octopus roots, I guess, whatever, and just the roots kind of stick up like that. Well, his head is down plain like this. He's trying to hide, but he is the kind, like I said, that if I would have gone through there, had I not seen him and stopped, he would have got me. I have a friend that's a Native American, and he's had warned me about a gugway. It's like I said, actually kind of Bigfoot, but it's the more aggressive type. But it did have the dog type snout. I sent y'all a picture, but I don't know if it came out. It didn't come out. If it didn't, we'll try it again. But so anyway, he's sitting there and he's looking at me, and he's just kind of hiding like that right there. I'm like, whoa, man! I put on the brakes, and wherever I did, I said I had a 40 caliber Glock. Well, man, all that's going to do is scratch mosquito bites, And so I sit there and looked at him. I threw my phone up. I got 3 pictures, and then I took off running. That's the first time I've run from a Bigfoot since 1977 when I saw that first one. And so that creature right there, the Bigfoot is. The gugway tends to have that bad attitude, and according to a friend of mine who knows more about him than I do, he said that is Bigfoot's notorious enemy. That if you get a group of Bigfoot together around a gugway, they'll actually kill it because gugway actually kills their youngsters. So I've not witnessed that, but like I said, it makes a whole lot of sense. I talked to a guy up in Alaska who had seen one there that came out, and there was a grizzly out there on one of those peninsulas that was out there digging up some of the freshwater clams. All of a sudden, it stands up and just starts sniffing the air. He said the grizzly's 9 to 10 foot tall, and so it takes off running as fast as it can. He said pretty soon Bigfoot walks up there, and then Bigfoot just owns the peninsula after that. And said it digs up the clams too and everything like that, and then it finally takes off. I also got to talk to a Native American lady up there who had them. I asked her, she was a park ranger kind of, and so I said, ma'am, can I ask you a question? She goes, sure. And I said, do you ever have any reported Bigfoot encounters? And this is a place called Denali National Forest. Denali is one of it's Alaska, the last frontier. But if you've ever been to Denali, if you haven't been there, you need to go. But if you have, it's plenty believable. We saw like 39 moose all the way from Anchorage driving to Denali, just right there on the side of the road. And so, and then there's wolves up there and everything else too. But anyway, so I asked her, I said, ma'am, I said, have you had any reported Bigfoot sightings? And she stopped what she was doing. And they have a different culture than we do. People here, you mention Bigfoot, they're going to turn and laugh at you. This lady stopped what she was doing. She cupped her hands like this and she bowed her head. And she goes, my people say I'm not supposed to talk about the hairy man. And I said, well, ma'am, I'm not going to make fun of you. I said, I live in Texarkana, Arkansas, the home of the Mountain Monster, and or 20 miles from the home of the Mountain Monster. And I said, we have them around my house. And I said, but I've heard of reports here, up here around Anchorage, all the way to Fairbanks and Denali. And I said, I was going to ask you. And so I said, I'm not going to make fun of you. So she kind of opened up a little bit. She goes, well, when I was a little girl, she said, we would hear them screaming coming down off the mountain. And she said, the ladies of our tribe would get all the children together. We would get to the places where we lived and stuff like that, that the men would come together. And we would all form kind of like a group until the things had gone away. And said that you would hear them screaming, you would hear them growling. And she said the people up here believe that they'll actually steal the children or steal the women. And so I said, wow. I said, man, that's, I said, we don't have that problem there in Texarkana or anything like that. I said, I appreciate you telling me that. And I said, so just asking you for the $1 million question. I said, so Bigfoot is real up here in the Denali National Forest. And then she did her hands again and she bowed. She said, I don't just believe because of what my mother and my grandmother told me. Man, that told me right there, but her demeanor told me the reverence and respect she had for this animal, number one, or if you don't want to call it an animal, call it a being or whatever. But it showed there that what had happened to her left a deep series of emotions in there that she, like I said, she actually had to bow her head because of the reverence that she had. So when you get across people like that, you see that. And like I said, the number of people that I've interviewed, you see them. I was going to have a operation on my hand. And so I was hooked up to a blood pressure monitor, and the other people, yes, thumbs up for everybody, because man, Bigfoot, like I said, it takes folks like us to make this where if somebody has an encounter, they're more prepared, they know more about it and everything like that, and then we get more stuff to the public. I appreciate what y'all do for this. But so anyway, I'm sitting there getting ready to have a hand surgery, and so the lady saw that I was reading a book about Bigfoot, and she goes, Bigfoot. Looked at my chart. She goes, Arkansas. She said, Texarkana, Arkansas, which is 20 miles from Fouke. She said, oh, have you ever seen the Fouke monster? And I said, yeah. She goes, really? Tell me about it. So I'm sitting there. My first reading is about 137/85, I think. And so all of a sudden, she's got me wrapped up in the little cuff there, and she's squeezing the bulb. My blood pressure goes up to 204/96. And they call this, and this is in Little Rock, Arkansas, at just outside Baptist Medical Center. And so they called the stroke alert team. They thought I was fixing to have a stroke. And my wife says, nah, he's not fixing to have no strokes. And anytime you ask him about it, said he relives it. And
Bigfoot's going to kill you eventually, one way or the other.
That's exactly what it was, and that's kind of what people say. I'm like, well, gee, thanks for that. Then pray for me. That's all you can say. But anyway, so she said, no, I said he relives that. So pretty soon my blood pressure went down to, I think it's 167/90. And it got down to where it was acceptable realm where I could go ahead and have my surgery. But it affects people this way. You see them. I know that's the way. I had no idea it affected me so bad that it was so obvious. But it is obvious, and it showed up on the medical stuff. Well, man, if that's not science, nothing is saying that Bigfoot's there. It's not because I have an active imagination. So anyway, it's a Bigfoot will, if they will. Like I said, I've had 2 encounters that were aggressive. I have my wife and son with me one night on Easter Sunday, 2014. He came charging in. He was either going to make me his boyfriend or my wife his girlfriend, one of the two, but whatever it was. And as he was coming in, man, he was boom, 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 boom. And so I had my pistol and I had my spotlight, and I got ready to light him up with the spotlight, and I was going to shoot him. Well, then I went ahead and lit him up, and when I did, he just went down on all fours again, started running the other way, stood up, and took back, crashing through the woods. Well, then he ran up in a tree and stood in front of my son. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Well, of course, I figured he thought my son was the weak link, and my son was in dental school. He was probably his next last year in dental school. And so you can hear him moving around. Well, finally he jumps down and he takes off. And when he does, he's got another one with him that I didn't know was there. And you can hear this one that's running beside him go, ruh, 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 like that right there. So anyway, my wife had done, when he did that right there, everything in the woods got quiet. I mean, it was just, the silence was deafening, as the cliche goes, My wife gets in the truck and she says, if this truck starts, you guys better jump into the back. And my son's pretty brave too. And he's about the same size I am. And she said, because when this truck starts, I'm gone. And I said, you mean to tell me you're going to leave your only son ready to graduate dental school? You're going to leave your only son and husband here in the woods with this rogue Bigfoot? And she goes, I will have more kids. She said, when you hear this truck start, you better get in the back because I'm gone. Oh, so we start driving out of there a little bit later, and my wife's sister-in-law calls and just coincidentally, and she goes, what are y'all doing? And Cindy goes, oh, we're down here in the Bigfoot woods. And she goes, y'all have anything happen? She goes, oh yeah, And then Cindy stops. She goes, just what in the world made you think this was a good idea anyway? I said, because you have always wanted to see one, and I wanted you to see one. And I said, we have one. We have been active with the same Bigfoot here that charged probably, I think it was January the 9th in 2013 was when we first. So we've been active with him for almost a year. And then, like I said, this is Easter Sunday, 2014. And so she said, well, just what were you going to do if he would have kept on coming instead of going back down and run out? I said, go shoot him. you know, and she just laughed, you know, said that wasn't going to do nothing, you know. And I said, man, I said, I'd have put so many holes in him, man. I said, you could have stood him on a record player and stuck a water hose in his mouth and used him for a lawn sprinkler. I said, because I had a gun there that's, I had a 30 shot magazine that you can shove up in there. And so you can actually hold a gun almost like a Tommy gun like that right there. But I had 30 shots of that pistol. And I figured, truthfully, I might have got off too before he got to me, you know, and just really threw me about 60 foot through the woods, you know. But anyway, but that, you know, when you're defending your family, it's different. Like I said, I don't want to kill all these things. I have seen them things be nurturing towards their infants. Again, when I told you I saw the mom and the two babies there, me and my son were there. She was just as patient with me and my son, watching her and those two babies of hers, as she was with her own babies. And then me and my friend Stephen Hill. Stephen, we went up there on December 23rd, 2019. And it was about 21 degrees at night. And it was the first time he and I had ever researched together. We've been friends for 30 years. But he had contacted me and he said, is this the same William I used to play softball with? I said, yeah. And so he said, well, man, if you like Bigfoot hunt, so do I. So we had made plans. So we had to take, all of a sudden had to take his daughter back to meet his wife because his father-in-law was sick. So we just went somewhere. I said, well, man, I know a place up here that we can go to that I've had some activity. And he goes, well, man, I do too. He said, let's just go up here. So we did. Coincidentally, we went to the very same place. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, so I know him. His character, man, is just unimpeachable. His name's Stephen Hill. He's just a good guy, very Christian minded, very family minded. And so we're sitting there, and as we get down there, I saw where a tree, they'll tend to mark a tree. One tree will be straight, and the other one will be like this right here, be leaned up against it. And these trees are about 70 foot tall. And I said, Stephen, I don't know what this is up here. And this is up at the base of the Washita Mountains. I said, but down in Balk, when you see that, I said, that's Bigfoot sign. And so we sit there and we're looking around. I put on the spotlight. I had a real good spotlight. And I shined it over that clear cut. And when I shined it across, there's 3 pairs of eyes coming across there. You can see mama's eyes. Then you can see one of the juveniles. You can see one of the other juveniles. Well, pretty soon, mama was ahead. And then when it hit all 3 of them sometimes, they just stopped. And so we're sitting there looking at each other. And like I said, we didn't, you know, it's kind of unnerving when you're sitting there, because I told him, I said, there's your 3 Bigfoot right there. And so we watched them for about 20 minutes and we filmed them. Well, you can do what's called tree knocking. I took a stick and I started knocking on a tree. Well, that made the mama mad. And so you could see her eyes actually change color from a high yellow to an orange to a green to an orange. She was not happy. And so Stephen even started walking back a little bit. I said, you know, don't run. I said, we got the pistols. I think the spotlight's going to be enough to keep her back, because, you know, they don't like light. Gun, they don't care nothing about. Spotlight, they do not like. They don't like having light. So anyway, things settled down. Well, then a little bit later, her 2 juveniles started acting ugly, like mamas do at the grocery store with kids. And boy, she looks at them, and then the eyes change color again. So we've got all this on video, and we're actually able to find where the juveniles walked away. And you can see a great picture of this juvenile with the cone head, with the black eyes, with the ape structured type face. And so then he got a call from his wife. And so then we had to leave and go back. But that was the first encounter. Then 3 nights later, we're down there on Sulphur River in Texarkana. And we find he's got his daughter again with us that time. One of them's right there on the banks of what's called Mercer Bayou. And it starts charging in on me. And she's got the FLIR, you know, the forward looking infrared device, you know. And man, I'll tell you what, that dude was on his way in, and she's almost crying. She's like, well, here he comes, here he comes, here he comes. So I had the spotlight. So I threw the spotlight up, hit him just enough light, and he went behind the tree and started going back. Well, man, like I said, she's tearing up. She goes home and actually draws me a picture of what she had seen. So we see that one. We watch it for a while. Then we go down to another place right there off where this place goes on Sulphur River. And so then there's 2 more down there. So we see 3 together the first night. And then we see 3 nights later up in there. Like I said, it's in December also. So they were really active. But we knew right then that, you know, my partner didn't run. This little girl was 16 years old, but she was tough as a bear now. She wasn't going to run. She was scared, but she wasn't going to run. We went about 2 weeks later, and we had one charge, and she and my son was with her dad, and she was standing with me together. So it come charging in, and you could hear it running in. And all of a sudden, I swear to you, the sound was like it hit a tree, because it went right up in a tree. And then we went spotlight, we couldn't find wherever it was. But I know it probably went up in a tree like that. And so that's something that, you know, the Bigfoot also will do. So anyway, that's just kind of some of the things that we've had. The other aggressive encounter I had was I had my pit bull with me. And we had found a track the day before, and we were down at a place called Thornton's Well in Mercer Bayou. It's just outside of Falk, Arkansas. we found this track, but by the time we found it that afternoon before, it was too late to cast it. And man, you always cast a track, you know, and that's one thing. Even if you think, oh, well, it doesn't have much, sometimes it'll show dermal ridges. It'll show some different things that you can't see otherwise. So my buddy had to work the next day. I said, don't worry about it. I'll get it. So as soon as I left church, had my plaster of Paris and got my pistols and got my tools and stuff. Me and my pit bull went down there. So as I get her and I hook her up to the leash, and she jumps out of the front seat into the ground. When she hits the ground, we make about 10 or 20 feet away. And when we do, this thing's up on the hill and he screams. And my pit was black. They say they don't like, you know, they don't like big animals, and they say they don't like black animals. Well, then I've got two of them right there. That's, you know, two of the stripes against me. Well, man, when this thing hollers, man, my dog Tippy, and she just stops, and then she kind of goes, quote, on point, unquote, and then she starts sniffing around, going to the grass, and you can tell how nervous she is. So I'm walking down there to where this footprint is. Like I said, I've got 2 rifles and I've got 3 pistols, and I've got my I've got my tools to put water in. I've got the shovel to dig the thing up. So we get down a little bit further. I find the track, and the track, it's so hot here in Texas that the dam had actually just dried up enough to where if I would have had to have a belt, or else one of those, I don't know if you call it macrame or whatever, where you put it around to have some kind of I guess you'd call it a mold to where you could actually just pour these plaster of Paris on the ground. So we go down there, and when we do, of course, like I said, the track is done dissolved to the point that it's not going to be workable. So we start walking back, but when we do, the thing screams again. And well, by that time, Tippy, as loyal as she wasn't going to let anything happen to me, but then she knew that it was not going to be good with her too. So she went back and forth across this road, just sniffing. She would stop, she'd arch that back, and, you know, and so we got back to where my truck was, and the thing had moved down this hill. And when he did, he screamed one more time. Well, then we started walking back to my vehicle. I took my fob from my truck, hit the alarm system where the horn was started going off. Well, I was hoping that would scream up, and it did. It was made to where I just don't know. Wouldn't know what it was, whether he didn't think it might be worth charging or not, because I didn't want to shoot him. Like I said, regardless, didn't want to shoot him, but he wasn't going to get me, and he sure wasn't going to get my dog. Man, I'm loyal about my dogs, more loyal to my dogs than my dogs are to me. So I get her, and we open the door. She jumps from the ground over my truck seat, over my console in one jump, and lands in her seat, and she gets down like right there. Then she starts shivering. So I look around, and then I actually stood on the edge of my truck rails, couldn't see where he was, didn't see anything. So, but I decided right then it was time to leave. But it could have been real serious right there, you know, the deal. Do I know Tal Branco? I've met Tal one time. Yes, I have. And Tal's a researcher, I think, for the BFRO there. And I saw him down here in Texarkana one time. He's a good researcher. He's had quite a few experiences as well. But like I said, I just don't sit there and when I have these experiences, I don't call the law enforcement. I don't think there's any sense in it. Most of the time, they don't believe you. I've delivered at UPS for 35 years. I've had plenty of opportunities and have taken them to talk to people, you know, they're game wardens and policemen about Bigfoot and stuff like that. And most of them are kind enough not to ridicule you. Every now and then you get one that's a stinker, but most of the time they're like, well, man, I had one this year. I fished a terminal in Lake Fork in Texas in September, and I went, and there's like 5 game wardens there. And I said, well, y'all ain't giving tickets. I said, y'all must be sitting here discussing where you had all your Bigfoot sightings, right? And they all laughed, you know, and they said, well, so you a Bigfoot hunter? I said, oh, yeah. Of course, I showed them a picture too like that. They said, man, you know, I've had some reports, you know, and they tell me where they would see them. They kind of get into the stories and stuff like that. But anyway, most of the game people, the Game and Fish Commission, they don't ridicule you. I don't know that they're allowed to say that they exist or not, but they will tell you that they have had people that are there that they've caught them out in the woods. You know, anytime you're shining a spotlight out of a truck, it's supposed to be illegal. But you know, when you have a Bigfoot bumper sticker, and then when you got a Bigfoot license plate, and then you've got a little small megaphone back there, it's got a picture of Bigfoot, and you got 50 Bigfoot pictures or more, and they tend to just kind of okay, you're either crazy or else, but you're telling the truth. But they tend to let you go. And then I've made some good friends that way. Like I said, they're actually very interested. I have one law enforcement officer whose dad had seen one. His dad used to be a milkman, and so he came down there. Somebody reported me and my son for having a marijuana grow out there. And so we had the buckets, we had the shovels and things like that, and we're actually going to cast a trap. Well, man, here he comes, lights on, everything else like that. And so he's like, what are you guys doing? I looked around, see if anybody around there wasn't. I said, well, I'll tell you the truth if you won't tell nobody. And he said, yeah. I said, I'm fixing to go cast a Bigfoot trap. Well, his whole demeanor kind of got it got interested, but still he was kind of cautious. And he said, a Bigfoot track? I said, yeah, Bigfoot track. He said, in there? I said, yeah, fix to do it right now. He said, can I go? I said, yeah. And so he let me walk along in front, which is good because I was going to walk there anyway in case he would step on it. But we went down there, and when I showed him the track, man, his eyeballs just got as big as saucers. And so he goes, can I call my wife and show her? So he's got, you know, the, whatever you call it there on the phone there. I'm not very good with my cell phone, although I've got one. He gets where she can watch us do this stuff like that. So anyway, they hang up the phone. He and I, you know, he's open with me and my son is there as well. And he's just as cool as he can be. And he goes, well, man, he said, I didn't mean to appear accusing or suspicious. He said, but then again, years ago, my dad was a milkman. He actually went down there by the woods of Falk and through there. The woods are really, really thick. Bobo on the Finding Bigfoot show, his response was, you could hide an elephant in there. And you could. And my dad had a buddy who was a safari guide in Africa. And he said, if somebody told me that in the woods there around Sulphur River, you were going to find anything from a tiger to Tarzan, he said, you better believe him. So anyway, this guy's dad had seen a Bigfoot when he was running his milk run years and years ago. And he said, that's why it intrigued me. He said, because I didn't know whether to believe him or not. And I said, you better believe him. And then he said, well, I'll tell you what, where we're sitting right here, I have to drive through this park every night. This is the only place I get scared right here. He said, I'll be honest with you. I speed up from 10, he said, to about 20 just to get past here. And then he goes, turns back around and comes back again. So it's really, really, like I said, when you have somebody like that's in law enforcement, all the things they've seen, every now and then they'll open up with you. And that tends to add an air of credibility to it also. I have one in Bowie County, friend of mine that Bowie County, Texas, the same way. He's checked out probably 3 or 4 prints across these muddy roads. They don't have oil top or anything like that. And he told me one day, he hollered at me, he said, man, you need to come down here. He said, something you're going to want to see. So I knew what it was. I'm just like, I hope I don't wreck this UPS truck getting down there. But anyway, so you could see where the thing had actually stepped on the berm. And then there's a track in the middle of the road that's just filling up with water. And the biggest set of tracks I found 2. I've got 2 that are 7 foot 5 inches apart. And this is on down there at around Sulphur River as well. I've got a picture of that as well. So anyway, it's you just never know what to get, but you're always surprised. You know, and it's so interesting because you got a creature here. I've seen 2. I've seen 4 over 9 foot, then 1 over 10 foot. And when you see things like that right there, and they're still been able to remain hidden, good Lord gave them a set of skills inside their own environment that, man, they're so much better inside their environment than what we are inside of ours. And so the things that they can do, I think one reason people don't find very many, they've been watching TV and they go in there one night and they have they go down there and they blow horns or shine lights or whatever. Then all of a sudden, then they don't ever come back to the same place. Very thick bottoms. Yes, Mark Green, very, very thick bottoms down there. Like I said, you can go in there at 2 o'clock in the afternoon where the bottoms are, and you can almost need a flashlight then because the shadows are so thick. And because the foliage is so thick. So these things, like I said, this is not just, like something you find that's well groomed. This is actually bottom land. There's actually quicksand down there. There's places, I promise you, that there's places where humans have not seen the ground that you're on. But the creatures have, and they're there. They're still there. I had this year, August the 5th, my birthday's August the 6th, August the 5th, we were down there fishing and had one actually walk up on us, but he stayed inside the woods. And he was trying his best to stink us out, which I think is a method that they use to intimidate somebody. And he was trying his best to stink us out. And my buddy's with me, and boy, his eyeballs got real big. Well, then all of a sudden his grandson calls and he had it on blast answer or blast speaker, whatever. So, man, I got so mad at him, I couldn't spit. And I said, would you mind turning it down about 400 decibels there, so in case he comes back, we don't spook him again. So sure enough, the thing falls us down the riverbank a little bit, and then he does the same thing again. And this is like 11:30, in the daytime. So there's everybody thinks, oh, well, it's a nighttime thing that they do. Like I said, they watch the shows. They should go in one day, then they don't ever come back. Well, man, I've just got as many pictures in the daytime as what I have at nighttime. So the reason that you see more in the nighttime is because most of the food they eat tends to be nocturnal. That's when, the little rodents and all the other stuff get out, and so that's when you're going to find most of them, because Bigfoot does come out in the daytime. I saw in my UPS truck, I've driven during that time 35 years, just probably a little over 2 million miles. I kept up with it for a long time, and almost 2 million miles. I saw one in a town called Douglasville, Texas, and I saw one in a town called Maud, Texas. And those are the only two I saw in 35 years. Well, that's an average of 1 per million miles. That's quite a bit of quite a bit of space now. But the fact that I saw them, I had one guy there that I had told him about it, and he goes, "Let me tell you where you saw it at." And so he told me. I said, "Yeah, how'd you know?" He goes, "Back there duck hunting one day," and said, "I walked over one of them pits, said right across that doggone levee, and he said there's one I shot a duck. The thing has my duck in his hand, and he actually just bites the head off." And he said, "I only had just duck shot." And he said, "I wasn't about to argue with him over that duck. I told him, enjoy your supper." And he got out of there. But anyway, so that right there, when you hear stories like that right there, that people that live there all the time, they know they're real. They're not going to lie to you. They're not going to be open with you at first. A lot of times, sometimes it would take 4 or 5 times delivering to these people before they finally open up and tell you the truth. You know, they said, "Well, remember you asked me first day you came here if you had any Bigfoot? Well, let me tell you this story." And so they would. And so that's this area is really, really populated with these creatures, and it's popular with people who, if you don't go in there with a haughty attitude or like, you know, I'm going to make fun of you or tell everybody, then sometimes they'll open up. When they do, you get some really, really good information, some good stories. A lot of the things that you learn, like I said, the tree knocking. Been my favorite encounter, woodwalkers. So what has been my favorite encounter so far? Probably the one I had this year. I brought my buddy down from Alaska, and he came down in October last year, and we both got COVID. I just got over COVID again, but we both got COVID, and so we didn't get to do any researching. Man, he's really done a lot of studying, and he'd never gotten a chance to go look around up there. He works for the government up there at the airport in Anchorage, so he got to come back in April. So man, he was all excited, and so was I. And they don't have snakes up there in Alaska. So the first place we went down the Sulphur River, we go to get out, and there's a cottonmouth right there, just coiled up. Man, they've got his head raised back. You can see them, that white mouth and those teeth hanging down. And hey, he got about 40 yards away. And I said, "Well, man, that cottonmouth's just a little too aggressive. He's going to have to die." So I killed him, put him on a stick, and I walked towards him. He head the other way. Not that he was scared. He just said, "I just don't like snakes," you know. So anyway, so that was really, really funny. And so that was the first experience we had. Then we went on down into the woods there, and then we heard what we thought could have been Bigfoot, but just wasn't sure. But then we went to the place we went there around in the mountains up there around the Ouachitas. And as soon as we pulled in this one area, you could almost, this is cliche, but it was almost electric. He goes, "My gosh," he said, "there's so much difference in this atmosphere right here than what we just came in." He said, I'm actually got chill bumps. You know, of course, too, it's a scary area, but I said, "This is where I've seen a lot of my Bigfoot at." So sure enough, we're there, and we get out. And that's where we see the 10.5 footer right there. We could hear them walking. We could hear them snapping sticks, but we couldn't. They were staying just inside the tree line. So I told him he had his phone. He had a much better phone than I did. Had one of them government phones that has a real nice camera on it. I said, "Well, let's just take your camera, and I'll take the pistol, and then I'll be the snake man." I said, "And you can take the pictures." So anyway, as we get down, I said, "There's something down there that's making some noise." And I said, I don't see it. I said, "But take you some grid pictures." And by a grid picture, I mean, point your camera here, and when you get your picture, then scoot it over a little bit, get your grid here, and take, maybe 10 pictures or something like that. And then we go home and blow them up to see what we can find. Well, man, we're still standing there in the woods. And after he's taken about 4 or 5 of these pictures, and we look at it and said, "Look, standing right there." And there's this 10.5 foot black Bigfoot sitting there looking at us. And you can see that there's a handprint in the middle of his chest. There's possibly another one hanging on to him. So, man, he's just blown away. Well, he had done some really good research. As I said, his name's Daniel Becker. And Daniel had actually made contact with a lady photographer up there in Anchorage. And so he sent her the pictures, and she has some kind of device that draws kind of a laser outline of what's there. Well, sure enough, man, this thing draws a laser outline of this Bigfoot standing in this tree. But he'd also contacted a man named L.A. Marzulli. Marzulli is world renowned for doing research into what they call the Nephilim of the Bible and stuff like that. But he had called Marzulli. He sent the picture to Marzulli, and Marzulli, like I said, very intelligent man. And he sent us back the right then the answer. He said, "There's no doubt in my mind that's real." I said, "No, we're still sitting here looking at it, you know." So anyway, so Marzulli, then he actually took that picture and we sent it to him. And I told y'all where it had the one foot that looks like a gorilla foot, and the other there, the one I found, and you fold it together and it would just come out perfectly. So we got an animal here in Arkansas. Like I said, I don't know what the DNA is, but it's got the same feet as what Bigfoot does. It's got the same look as what a gorilla does and Bigfoot does. But anyway, so we did this with Marzulli. So this guy was really prepared. I was very impressed because I've never done that. I've never had a photographer lined up, but he sent that picture to Anchorage, Alaska right then. And so she sent it back. So again, this guy's really, really smart. And so he sees grizzly bears all the time. He said, man, he said, grizzly ain't nowhere that big, and then so that's when you see an animal like that. And man, I'm afraid to death of the bear. I went to Montana last year and on a Bigfoot hunt. I was worried to death. But he said, man, I've seen grizzlies run across the runway up here in Alaska. He said, that grizzly's nothing compared to that Bigfoot. That's from the picture. So anyway, so that was a real good encounter. That's probably my favorite encounter because he got to see it. And then we went up there again the next day, and there was 3 of them that we're driving down this road down there and looked off there in the distance, probably 50 or 60 yards. And there's 3 Bigfoot up there in a tree that we can see. So we actually see them from the road, and they've kind of got what you call the patty haircut. It's got the cone head, got the eyes like that right there. It looks like it should have a chin strap that come with it. But so the Bigfoot is actually there. So we saw several Bigfoot that week while he was down. And so that was really probably my favorite right there because now he comes in and he has become one of the researchers on our team. Very, very good. And like I said, he gets to talk to some of those people in Alaska and things like that. So again, that's probably one of my favorites. They're all good as long as I get to walk away from them,
Yeah.
And when you have your family with you, like I have had a couple of times before, when I've had Bigfoot encounters or Bigfoot sightings, those tend to be the scariest because you know yourself that you're going to have to take up for your family. I'm not going to let something happen to my family. I'm not going to let something happen to my dogs, but on something other like that right there. But then I think they have an intuition on who wants to hurt them and who don't. Worked at UPS 35 years. I was only bit by 1 dog. And, dogs they tend to know what you got on your mind as a rule and the air that you present in. And I still only got bit by 1, I think, because he's retarded. But anyway, so I do. I think they have that intuition to know, and especially the areas that we research in. Like I said, we stay there. We don't just fly by night. We don't go in one day and say, okay, that's it. We've been researching a couple of these areas now 6 or 7 years. And then my buddy up in a little town called Ashdown, Arkansas, have I been thrown at or hit with anything besides being charged? Yes, I have. I've had sticks thrown at me. I've had rocks thrown at me. I had pieces of broken log thrown at me. And it would really surprise you just how accurate they are as far as when they throw things. Me and my son went to a little place up around the Ouachita Mountains up there, around one of the lakes up there. And so I had gotten a report from 2 younger kids there that were up there making out one night. And so when they were sitting there in their truck and there was somebody in the front seat, another couple, they accidentally hit the brake light. When they did, the brake light came on and there's a Bigfoot looking at them in the woods right there. So man, they jumped up, they took off running, but they contacted him and everything else like that. So I went up there to where they were. We got there about 2:30 in the morning. Like I said, it's right there on the banks of one of the lakes up there. And so there's some young kids that are there making out. We give them a chance to get dressed or whatever they're doing to get out of the way because I didn't want them screwing up my hunt and they didn't want me screwing up whatever they were doing. So we let them get dressed. They took off leaving. So then me and my son get out. And right as he gets out, I put him out next to the river channel. There's a river where the river runs up through the dam there. And then I get out on the other side. Well, he gets out, and so everything's fine. I get out towards the side where there's a big mountain and a trail right there. And all of a sudden, when I get out, I get about 10 steps. And I hear crash, 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 crash. Look, and then thump, something hits the ground. It rolls over, and I've got my spotlight. And this thing has thrown a rock at me that is probably the size of a softball. And it was rolling up there. And I'm like, I looked at my son. I said, please tell me that you just threw a rock into the woods and hit a tree and it bounced back towards me. And he goes, no. And he's dying laughing because it really shook me up because I wasn't prepared for that to happen that fast. And so we could hear the thing run up the side of the mountain there, and then it stopped there. And so, but also we went down one night with my buddy, one of my research partners, and his wife and his daughter and my wife. And we had an encounter about 4 nights before. And so there's a restaurant there. So his wife goes, well, I don't believe in Bigfoot. Man, I can't stand that. I'm like, oh, we got to educate you tonight. So we went down the banks of Sulphur River to a place called Smith Park there. And there's a boat ramp. So we went down there, and like I said, this is one place we'd had an encounter a couple nights before. And so when we get down there, his daughter is extremely athletic. And so she picks up a rock and she goes, can I throw this rock? I said, oh, please do. And so she throws this rock and it lands in the water. It's probably 30, 40 seconds after that. And you hear, and a rock lands in the middle of the river. And she goes, what was that? And I said, throw you another one. So she throws another one. And whenever she does, the same things happen. She said, what is that? I said, you know what that is. She goes, no, 16 years old, they know everything. I said, well, throw you another one. So she throws another one. And a little bit after that, and my wife's standing there, his wife's standing there. His wife's got the uneasy look like this isn't supposed to be happening like this. And of course, like I said, she's just oblivious because she knows me and her dad go take care of whatever it is. So all she's got to do is run. So anyway, she throws it again, and it throws another rock that lands in the middle of the river. And then you hear what if it's a rock, it's 200 to 300 pounds. But then you hear splash, and then you hear slosh, 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 slosh. And this thing is crossing the river coming over there towards us. And he's just around the bend there where this bend is in the river. So you can hear him, but you can't see him. And so he starts heading towards us. Well, my wife, she's very smart. She's like, I'm going to the truck. So she heads to the truck up there, and the smell starts really picking up. Well, then his wife starts walking to the truck, and she picks up this smell. She's the unbeliever. She picks up the smell, and she goes, oh my gosh, I smell that nasty dead fish smell. Well, she starts dry heaving. And so I was the only one that had a pistol. I walked up there to her, was going to get her back to the vehicle. And whenever I did, my eyes start watering like I'm peeling a whole bag of onions. And I'm not scared because I know what it is. I know it's got the pistol. I've had encounters with this same creature before. Sometimes you get to know the characteristics of these different creatures. We call one called one knocker. He'll knock one time and that's it. Some of them will run back and forth across the edge of the wood line there. But anyway, so she's sitting there, and like I said, I start nearly crying, but I'm not crying. It's just that much water. I get her back to the vehicle. Then I go back and get my buddy Randy and his daughter. We go up there and we sit there 10 or 15 minutes, and the smell continuously gets worse and worse and worse, but we can't find him. So we're shining the spotlight and everything. Well, when we went back the next day after this, we leave there and we get about probably 2 or 3 miles away. My wife goes, we got to go back. And I said, you left your cell phone, didn't you? And she goes, no, I've got to know if that smell is still there. So we go back, and when we get back there, man, that smell is nowhere around. It was almost like an air freshener commercial, So she and I went back the next day, and we saw, and there was a ravine there, kind of a little valley. And this thing had gone in that valley, and you could see the tracks, and you could see the trees that he had, kind of manipulated while he's down there. And he was down there in that little valley and that ravine while me and my wife were standing there looking for him with spotlights. So they throw that. They threw that at my wife's buddy, and my buddy's wife. Here's using thermal imaging at night. My husband, Bigfoot Lake, was asking. He's out getting wood. Yes, I do. I do use thermal imaging. Also, the good thing about thermal imaging is also good in the daytime. Yeah, you don't have to just use it at night. It's going to. We did it this year with some friends of mine came down here from Tennessee. First time we had met, but they contacted me wanting to come down here, and so they had a lot of thermal imaging stuff, and I had just the one FLIR, but we saw looked to be several from that thermal imaging. I've seen them from my thermal imaging as well, and I'm not real good with it because I'm not real good with electronic stuff, but I'm getting better with it. But you can also use that thermal imaging in the daytime, and like I said, it'll also give you a sighting in the daytime. It'll outline the body's lines and everything else like that. So it's expensive. That's the only drawback of this hobby right here. It's expensive. If you nowadays, especially with gas and everything else, if you get on the right bunch of Bigfoot, you can spend $400 or $500 a week on gas, plus with what it takes for drinks, for everything else too, and then plus with your batteries in the Mount Vernon, Eola, Arkansas. Yes, from Mark Green in the Mount Vernon, Eola, Arkansas. I'm a member of a group here called Arkansas Bigfoot, and I tend to go on there at least once a week and look and try to find the latest sightings. Then I get a map. And then the place with the map, and I try to point like some people do with push pins, but I just do it with an ink pen, just try to cross it and find. And you would be surprised how close these things are. They actually, the Fouke monster came into Texarkana back in 1971. Of course, he was in the side of the little town of Fouke there, but actually came into the outskirts of Texarkana over there where there was a couple of warehouses, and it was also seen over there at one of these cemeteries that was here in Texarkana. So you would be surprised just how close they'll get to you. One lady that was my nephew's best friend's grandmother, and this thing was standing out there in her flower bed one morning. And so to find that out, I didn't know who it was. And all of a sudden, he had told my nephew about it. My nephew goes, well, yeah, that may be my buddy's grandma. Well, sure enough, it was. And so, like I said, they'll come to the city limits. They're not afraid. They're actually they're probably more confident in their ways than we are, with them being around us. But so they do to come around. You can find where these sightings are. Like I said, get you a good map. And then too, there's 2 or 3 websites on here that have where they document where the encounters have got. They've got a grid there. It'll show you every state. It'll show you every county. And then you can go in there and look and find what's closest to you. And you'd be really surprised just how many there are that you thought, oh man, it wouldn't be. That was my father-in-law. It took me 33 years to make a believer out of him until I finally took him down there one day after a rainstorm. We were down there while it was raining. We got rained on the way back. We come to a mud puddle that was just barely a divot before we got there. There in the middle of that mud puddle, there was the Bigfoot track on the side where he'd slipped, and then another one right in the middle of the water there where the track is filling up with muddy water. He stuck a big stick in the middle. And so when we got back to the vehicle, he started honking. He was back. He went back because his back was hurting. He was honking the horn. So I thought, well, maybe it hurt himself. So we left and we got back. He goes, did you see it? And I said, what's that? And he goes, you see that mud puddle? I said, yes, man, it rained while we was down there, didn't it? He goes, no. He said, did you see that big stick there in the middle of it? I said, yeah. I said, I wonder how that thing got there. And he goes, well, I put it there. And I said, well, why'd you do that? And he goes, well, did you look around? And I said, yeah. He said, there was a track in there. And I said, yeah, there's a track in there. And he goes, man, there's something down here. My father-in-law's a very wise man, very godly man, very loving man. He wasn't being dismissive of me. He just like, I could not, and he'll tell you now, I could not believe there would be anything that lived this close to Texarkana. Texarkana is about 80,000 now, something like that. But that lived this close to the town in Texarkana. He said, I cannot believe those things will be down here this close. And so it's an eye-opening experience. But I had several people. The one thing that I almost doubted, but I didn't, because I know how crazy this subject is. But people who have Bigfoot coming to their window, knocking on their window. I have a man who employed for me for about 30 years doing my lawn care and stuff. And I was going to sell my truck this year. And he goes, why are you going to sell it? And I said, well, man, I'm down in the woods a whole lot. And I said, there's creatures down there that if it breaks down, I don't need to be down there walking out of the woods by myself. I said, I may not make it. He goes, you talking about that big gorilla? And I said, well, yeah. And he goes, I see him. And I said, where? He goes, when I first came to America, and he became a citizen, and he lived down in Falcon. He said, we lived in a shack down there. He called the man's name. I won't call his name. But anyway, so the thing up there, and the thing would come to the side of his door, his house at night, and look in the window at his son. Also, there's a man that showed that's called Killing Bigfoot. That wasn't their idea to call it that right there, but the man who actually is one of the headers, one of the main administrators of that right there, the first sight encounter he ever had, a Bigfoot came to his window and actually was motioned for him to come to the outside. Well, Diane, thank you. She said she appreciates I go from one to another. I've got a lot of experience. I mean, I love this. And when you get addicted to it, and then also I'm out there 5 days a week, and I've got some good friends that, like I said, that I do this with. I really enjoy that. But when you have encounters, man, you're like, oh gosh, man, I never would have believed this. And then your next encounter, I have one day, excuse me, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and was actually going down there to where I told y'all where the hogs were down there, where the 22-inch tracker was. And so I have 2 metal knees, so I can't manipulate my legs too well. So I had to stop and put my feet up on my bumper to get my boots on. So I stopped right there and put my boots on. I throw my leg up onto the back of my bumper, and I happen to look to the left, and there's a Bigfoot standing there looking at me. It's not a big one. It's probably about 6.5 foot tall. But this is like 4 o'clock in the afternoon on October 13th, 2 years ago. And so he sits there and he pulls that head back right quick when he sees that I'm looking at him. And I ain't moving my head. I ain't moving anything. I just don't want to take a chance on ruining the sighting. I don't want him to take a chance on thinking I'm being aggressive either. So anyway, he pops that head back out. And whenever he does, he jumps across the trail. Then he hides over there in kind of a little brush. We sit there about 5 minutes and we look at each other. And then he takes off running. Well, they had been doing a lot of clear cutting down there back the direction that he came from. And so I figured they probably just messed up his house, and he just happened to come to the woods at the wrong time. And that gugway that I saw, he was about 5:15 in the afternoon. I was on my way to church. And so like I said, you do see him in the middle part of the day, but it's really, really interesting to do this. People who I can't make anybody believe. I want them to believe because I'm telling you the truth. They're very, very real. Like I said, man, I have found scat. I found hair. I found tracks. I've got we had a baseball bat that my son broke. We were using it as a knocking stick, and so he broke the handle. So we had some pears and we had some Slim Jims and a pork chop and this bat. So he said, well, let's just leave this bat as a gift. It's called gifting. If you leave them something, a lot of times they'll leave you something back. So we leave the bat there. The barrel's on the ground. The handle is up on the edge of the tree. He puts a couple of Slim Jims in there. And we put some pears up on the tree right there. And so we leave. We come back the next day and I can't find the bat or the pears or anything else like that. So I called him at his dental office. I said, man, we're going to come back down here. I can't find the bat. I can't find the pears, nothing. So we come back that afternoon and we go search around. Well, sure enough, about 40 yards from where we put the bat, there's the bat. And the bat's got several teeth marks where they say the lacquer that they do on these baseball bats actually tastes like ants or something. So we find it where the teeth marks, the thing is actually bit into the bat 5 or 6 different times. And then it has given us, it's taken the pork chop, it's taken the Slim Jims, and it has, then we find the pears, and it has eaten one of the pears, and the others have had a couple of just bite marks in it and just thrown them into the ground. And it also left us a couple of red Solo cups out there for whatever reason. You know, they thought we might need, but they were squished up. It wasn't like to drink out of. They just been squished up and left right there. So they leave you these gifts. And so this was the same place where me and my wife and son had that encounter, you know, not too far before the one I told you that we had out there at night. So these things, like I said, really, the gifting that they do, we leave them peanut butter. And down here at Fouke, they tend to like fish more than they do, you know, anything else. Now, once we get up into the mountains of the Ouachitas, they tend to like candy and peanut butter. We take a peanut butter jar, and we had I took my preacher's son, and I had him a brownie. He actually left the brownie sitting on there, and we went to church that night on Wednesday night. And he goes, man, he goes, you got to bring back my brownie. I forgot it. So I went up there a couple of days later, and when I did, his brownie was gone. But also where the brownie was, there was a bunch of rocks that had been left there. You know, nice looking, you know, rocks, colored rocks, and everything else like that. And so I go to church then Sunday night, and he said, man, did you find my brownie? I said, no. I said, something else found your brownie. I said, but he left you these rocks. And so so we started using that one spot there on this stump, and we would bury a jar of peanut butter, not one great old big ones, but bury the jar. And for a while we were opening it just so they would know it was there. Well, then we even quit opening it, and we would go in there, and after we would bury it in the dirt with just the top, go back the next day and it'd be dug up, and they would take the whole jar of peanut butter. We come back we would come back several times then, and when we finally come back and find it, there would be the lid to the peanut butter, and the peanut butter jar, watch, it would be gone, it'd be empty, and they would put the lid back on the stump. And so then we would go, and we'd always carry, you know, every time we go, we'd carry the candy bars, we'd carry the peanut butter, we put it down in there again. Next day we come back, and we'd always make sure we come back at least the next day, and then that night the peanut butter would be gone. So we did that about 5 different times. I've got those peanut butter lids out there. I've got the lid to some sardines that I put up there where the little ring is. We jabbed it in there real tight so he couldn't break it loose there, so possums couldn't get it. We go back the next day. The ring, the top to the basin was still on top, but then the basin was thrown to the ground by the base of the tree. Like I said, he's the biggest litter bug you've ever seen. He also takes these candy bar papers we have, and we used to open them for him. We don't do it anymore. We just sit there, and then all of a sudden you'll see the trail they go, and here's all these candy bar papers. We use the snack size, and here's all these candy bar papers where these Bigfoot go through the woods. So again, it's really crazy. And but they tend to they give us stuff. They've taken golf balls, which they give us rocks, stick formations, and again, this at a place that we generally get used to them. It's not like a fly-by-night deal. As a rule, you just don't get anything. But if you want to do it and get into this experience here, like I said, give yourself some time, find you an area. Let's get on these websites I was telling you about. Find something close to your area. You know, talk to some of your friends. You know, people want to tell you about their Bigfoot sightings. I'm telling you, but it's almost like a support group. It's the urge to confess, but sometimes they don't think people are going to make fun of them, so they don't want that. Because I get mad if somebody makes fun of me. Now, no more I don't. They can make all the fun they want to. I had one lady there from a TV channel was making fun of me on TV. I sent her an email. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll pay for your gas. I'll pay for your food. I'll pay you for your time, and you come down. I said, you give me 20 minutes. And I said, if I ain't got a Bigfoot down around you, I said, I'll pay you $200. Of course, that's a lot of money to me, man. That's fishing tackle money right there. You know what her answer was? No, I think I'll pass this time. I think you will too, you know. But So it's really something there where, like I said, people will joke with you until all of a sudden it comes down to the to the meat and potatoes time, and then they're not quite as brave as they were, and they're not quite as wanting to make as much fun, because I'll take them down there, because man, it's I don't have any doubt that we're going to make it back as far as that goes, but I do have doubt that the way my preacher's son that I was telling you about, when I went back there, they tore up the whole woods. Whenever after I took him, I had trees pushed over all the trails that we used to get in and everything, and evidently they just didn't like him. And I don't know what it was, but they just didn't like him. And they have their personalities like that. And I had one time, the lady, I worked with her, and she's a very, very sweet lady, but she wanted to go Bigfoot hunting, but she was afraid. But she said, well, have you ever used any of those pheromone chips? I said, no, because I can't afford them. She goes, well, have you ever used any menstrual urine? And I said, I don't have that problem. I said, that's a hard question to ask somebody, man, would you give me a jar of menstrual urine to go down here to the Bigfoot woods? And she said, well, if I gave you some in a Gatorade bottle, would you take it? And I said, yeah. And so, I'll do anything for a good Bigfoot hunt as far as that goes. It sounds kind of crude, but I'm not being crude. That's what we did, because they respond to the female pheromone. And so me and my son went down there, and we were there that Saturday morning. I actually took my wife down there and everything with us that day. And then we left about 12 o'clock, and then we put out, the last thing we put out was the urine. We come back about 4 o'clock, and the damage not been so extensive, you would have thought a bomb would gone off. But I mean, they pushed over 4 trees over my trail. I said the roots sticking up in the air. There were limbs thrown. I mean, they just threw a mess for whatever. They just didn't appreciate, her scent, or the fact that they may have thought we brought somebody else in there to quote their territory, unquote. So they do. They have these things that if they don't want you in there, they let you know. And that's so was he the first Falk outing in 2019? Yes, I was. And like I said, Keith Crabtree, the man who played the creature in the movie, he's a good friend of mine. But I've been going down to Falk. I guess probably since we live probably 8 miles from Falk. So I guess probably since I was a little boy, 4 or 5 years old. And then there's a lot of fishing through there. Like I said, those gravel pits, it was, free fishing, a lot of good fish. And so I was at the first Falk outing. I went down there. There's a place called Monster Mart. I don't know if y'all have ever heard it or not, but the man is actually, oh man, it's great. He's got maps there. He's got places where he's got them documented and pinpointed there where people have had sightings. He knows all about the latest sightings, things that have come in. And so I went down there and worked with him. He actually said, man, would you come down here and help me move some of this merchandise? I said, sure. And so I did. And man, I got to meet some great people. That's the thing about this subject right here. You're going to meet some of the best people you ever met. You tell people that, oh man, you're crazy. How you call some people that believe in something that far outlandish, some of the best people you ever met? I said, give it a chance and see. And sure enough, they do. And man, like I said, they're just as, they're just happy to share information. They're there just to have a good time. Some of them may look a little bit different, than you do, but I mean, there's some really good people. So I enjoy it. And that's what I did. So in that day, coincidentally, we moved the most merchandise he'd ever had. But that was because the people there were so responsive. So, and I'll be there. I generally try to help him when they have that Bigfoot conference down there at his place there. He's good to help me. If there's a sighting, he'll call me and tell me, hey, Bigfoot sighting down here, you might want to come. You'll probably come down here and look at it. So I'll do that right there. But it is. It's the most exciting thing I've ever done. Like I said, I've won over $100,000 bass fishing, and that's exciting and it's fun. And Bigfoot, and I think I've made $200. They paid me $200 to drive to Austin, Texas, do a TV show and back again, and that's all I've ever made. So if it's other than that, I'm going to starve. But I'm just going to have to starve, because it's a real thing. It's a real creature. It's a real phenomenon. And folks, they're in every state but Hawaii, and that's because all of Hawaii's wildlife has been taken there by people who hunted. And somebody said the other day they'd actually had a sighting there. If they do, I won't know how it got there. But I didn't believe in Bigfoot till 10 seconds before I saw it. So I'm not going to sit there and tell anybody they're lying over anything. But every state in the union, nearly every country. I've talked to people from New Zealand. I've talked to people from Australia, Newfoundland, China, who have been good enough to contact me and tell me about some of their encounters. I mean, that's the greatest thing. Well, here they are halfway or all across the world. While it's daylight here, it's dark there, and they're telling you about some encounters they had. So it's really increased my knowledge. It's increased my respect for the animals that they have right there. And then for the people who are brave enough and who are kind enough to share their experiences with you, because I'm still learning. There ain't no experts.
Before we're going to have to get on with the pictures, so you have time to talk about them.
Okay.
But before we do, let me ask you this, because you keep going on about, getting people more active in the subject and encouraging them and everything. If you were now in your area, obviously the part of the country that you're in is just ate up with reported activity. So, for you, it's not that hard of a thing to look on like the BFRO or some of these other sites and say, hey, there was a reported incident here and everything. What would be your recommendation for somebody all the way across the country, if we're talking about North Carolina, or New Mexico or whatnot? What would you tell them? Would you say, hey, go on the BFRO, find an encounter and go out in those woods right there? And what would you be looking for? How do you narrow it down to somebody that's actually wanting to go out and have some kind of interaction? How would you narrow down the area, and what would you tell them to do to go out and start experiencing some of this?
Okay. And then that's a real good question, because there's a lot of people who have asked me that. And the first thing to do, like I said, you look on BFRO or look up NAWAC. It used to be called the Texas Bigfoot Research Conservancy. Now it's the North American Wood Ape Conservancy. And there's several more that have these places where Bigfoot has the sightings are listed there for you. And then go through there, find some, some of them, I've driven as far as almost 300 miles for a good reputable Bigfoot sighting that was really out of the ordinary. And find you a place like that right there, and that's close by. And the first thing I'll do, if I can't get access to any private land, I'll go like to the boat ramps of some of these lakes and stuff like that. I go to some of the wildlife management areas, to some of these research grounds that they have, and go through there and look around. And then I'll try to talk to the to some of the people that work there. Some of them may laugh at you, but hey, a turtle don't get nowhere if he don't stick his neck out. So you ask these people, and you would really be surprised just how many people are wanting to share with you, or some sort. Nearly everybody has somebody or knows somebody that's had these sightings. So again, do that right there. And when you do, take you a notebook. I lost my notebook not too long ago here. I don't know where it is, from years and years of experiences, man. Boy, it's like almost like losing my Bible. It's like losing my Bigfoot Bible. And I haven't found it yet, but I've got but mostly my memory's still pretty good, so I can remember all the things that happened. But get there right there and write these experiences down. Write down what time of year it was, because, man, these things, some people think they migrate from our areas that we've got down here. I think they do too at times. I think they migrate based on whether the food or whether it's because of temperature, whether it could be because of pressure. I know that when deer season starts down here, man, the Bigfoot go bananas. They start pushing over trees. They really, once these hunters start going through there with their 4-wheelers and stuff like that and putting in their stands, they'll let you know real quick. They're not real happy about that most of the time. But do go through that, look at these websites. Like I said, watch anything that you can watch. Some of these TV shows. Now, some of these TV shows on there, you tend to get the impression that somebody's just trying to make a name for themselves. I know one or two. I've known some of these hoaxers. There are several national hoaxers you guys have probably seen and heard of. And I've had them contact me, and, man, when you going to take me Bigfoot hunting? Let's say the 12th of never sounds just about right, then they get mad, and because you don't do it, but they have killed any kind of credibility that they had, and then they've made fun of other people doing that. And, man, when we get any kind of strides in Bigfooting, we make it by little steps and inches. When we lose credibility, we lose it by the yards going backwards. And so you've got to watch what you do. There's no sense in making up any stories or something like that. 99% of the people generally don't have an encounter for a long time. But if you'll do that right there, like I said, get that book, the notebook, write down what time of year it is. Try some different techniques. Calling people may make fun. People don't find the Bigfoot, you see them go out there, woo, and all that crap. But, man, it works. Actually calling. My favorite call is a barred owl call. I'll do the woo, 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 and then after that, and then they have a real long. That wasn't good because I'm just getting over COVID, but it's generally pretty good. And I carry a little plastic megaphone about 10 inches tall, and it really amplifies your voice, and it takes the human element out of it. and so do that right there. And I've had Bigfoot and called him Bigfoot doing dog barks. I've had them come in doing rabbits, the wounded rabbit call. I've had them take a deer call, and they do eat deer. Sad as that's, nature's a cruel mistress. You know, most of the people, the animals up there, the big ones are predators and little ones are food. But take you a deer bleating call. I've had Bigfoot come in on me when I took a hog runner with me and had them come in. And they don't just come in running, but they'll get to where they can see you. And once they determine what you are, sometimes they walk on in, sometimes they don't. But get you some kind of call that will help do that. Like I said, that little plastic megaphone is $2. You can find it anywhere. And I've got also I've got about 3 or 4 actual mechanical megaphones, and they've got they actually have a siren on there, like an air raid siren. And you turn that joker on, and man, a Bigfoot call when they're really agitated or reaching out to some of their buddies sounds just like one of those air raid sirens. And so I'll take that right there. Also, I used one night. There's a bunch of kids come down there, and I was down there Bigfoot hunting by myself. And I had a creature there that was, he and I were just kind of getting used to each other. And all of a sudden, here they are. They're down there drinking and partying. So I've got they didn't know I was down there, kind of pull my truck off the side of the road there. Well, it has a megaphone. And so I thought, I'll fix these jokers right here. So I mashed the button. I said, 10-4, 10-4, juveniles down here consuming alcohol, fixing to contact him and see about making an arrest. And so then, turn it off again. And then I turn on the alarm, the siren, the woo, woo, woo. Man, here it goes. Hey, about 10 cars crank up at the same time as fast as you've ever seen, and off they go. I've got the rest of the night by myself, man. So that's kind of one of those funny stories, but still, it came in. So I use those things right there. Like I said, use those calls, game cams. While we're sitting here talking, I've got I think 4 game cams out in the woods right now, and generally I have about 10 to 12 out there. And it's go ahead, Spence.
Hold on, we got to bring since you brought this up, I've got to ask the question. If not, people are going to raise Cain. So you got 95% of the Bigfoot world that says game cameras don't work. Now, I know your thoughts on this because you and I have talked about this. Please go into your thoughts on the game cameras and a little bit of how you go about setting them up.
Okay. And I'd love to do that because just sticking them out there, I learned this from a place that I had a deer lease up there. When I would put a new camera up on a tree, and my son and I'd be excited, and we'd be walking down the trail, and boy, we'd see this fresh deer track. We're like, man, we got him right now. We're going to see who he is. And then all of a sudden you get up there, and the deer will walk behind the dadgum tree. You're like, oh man, how'd that happen? And this would happen time and time again. We had a big old 9-point we called Brutus. Finally, we got a chance to see him, but it was by accident. But they would come to the tree. They see this foreign object all of a sudden that wasn't there hanging from the side of the tree, and they're going to totally avoid it. Plus, most people don't take the time to use scent killer. I put scent killer on mine the first time I put it out, and that's it. But whenever we started using game cameras, and I was very lucky. I was down there around Sulphur River and got a few things where you could hear the Bigfoot walk up. You could hear him sniffing the camera. And then you could hear him crunch, 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 as he walked away. And so I thought, man, there's something to it. But it was right there on the side of the tree. And so I said, well, man, we got to do something different. So I started, when me and Steven, my friend Steven, we started putting out game cameras. I took those game cameras and found a brush top. And instead of just hanging on the side of the tree, I didn't even tie them down. I took them and stuck them inside the brush top, maybe about a good 12 to 13 inches, something other like that. And I put them at a level whereby you should be able to, if something walks by, you're going to get to see a face. So you're shooting through a little space about like where y'all see my face right now. I know that's scary to you, but where you see my face through there like that, and you're shooting through an area like that. And then because the Bigfoot does not see it, there's nothing to actually make it suspicious unless there's some sin or something like that. But then all of a sudden, when this Bigfoot walks by, when that flash goes off, you've already got him on camera. And that's the funny part about it, because when you get a Bigfoot's picture, as a rule, they're pretty upset about it. So the next picture you get is going to be a Bigfoot face, and they're looking through this hole that you got right there, or it's going to be a hand reaching through there to get your camera. And they'll actually throw my cameras. I mean, so I spend 2 hours looking for them. I got 2 up there right now on the ground. I have no idea where they are, but I've already spent almost a full day up there. But in saying that right there, uh, when you have those cameras out there like that right there, and they don't know they're there, they are effective. They're very, very effective. So like I get pictures of some biggest deer you've ever seen. Man, I've got coyotes, I've got bobcats, everything that you could possibly imagine besides the Bigfoot. But putting the cameras up there like that and having them hid like that, they don't have time to get alerted to it. So you get the pictures like that. And then, like I said, when you also get a picture of a hand reaching through there, I've got several there where they've got the hand. I've got the daggum hand across the lens there, where you can actually see the dermal ridges and all that stuff like that. So with that, using those cameras, folks, they've got some of the pictures the people are trying to put out there. They're not real. And I'm going to just be honest with you. Not everything is Bigfoot, and I'm not going to put anybody down. It's just some areas have more Bigfoot than others. I told Stephen the reason we took ours, we found a log. And we baited it up. And what we did, we put the two logs on top of each other and put the bait in between it. So it was a little bit of pressure on it. He wasn't just going to walk up and snatch it and take off. If there was a little bit of pressure, he was going to have to work to get this candy bar that we had there in between to get it out. And I sent y'all a picture there, the first one we got, and then later on showed how I cleared it up, and you can see where the hand, and he's actually lifting up this log, and he's actually getting this camera. So he had to work for it. So that gave me a little bit. I told Stephen, said that'll give us a little bit of extra time instead of him just coming up and getting your candy bars and go. And so it does work. And so like I said, I've got cameras out there right now. I have one there that my wife got to go on with me there, and we were getting so many pictures that it sends a signal back to your cell phone. And man, all of a sudden we'd be there at 1:30, 2 o'clock at night, and man, all of a sudden something flies on top of me and lands on my chest, and it's my wife diving over there to get my cell phone so she can be the first one to see the picture of the Bigfoot that we got. And so it really became addictive to her as well. I mean, some good pictures too. And that's the cry of it. You're not all pictures are good, not all of them are clear, but you're limited by the light that you get that you have there, that the setting that you have, and by the distance whereby the creatures come by. Sometimes they're really good and sometimes they're not, but you're still getting a picture you can look through there and see, and it'll, if nothing else, it gives you a clue as to where you see where it was and where you had, as to why they're walking by or why they're coming by closer or later or something. Yeah.
Let's go ahead and show some of these pictures, and what I'll do is I'll pause the pictures and you can go ahead and talk about them, and then tell me when you're ready to go on to the next picture.
All right, let me preface this with the fact, like I said, all these pictures, like I said, all these are real. Some of them are real clear. If you send it phone to phone, it's very, very clear. Sometimes when you send it phone to email or computer, sometimes it's not as clear. That's the nature of the beast as far as for doing the technology. But still, like I said, what you're going to see here, you're going to see a real face. I'm going to show you a picture here in a minute. I'll tell you about when it gets to it. And I was actually asked by the state of Arkansas to put this in the museum up there on the banks of the Arkansas River in Little Rock, because it's such an interesting picture. But go ahead, just picture if you want to, and that'll kind of wind us down if y'all need to. Okay, this track right here that you're looking at, now that's a Powerade bottle right there. That picture right there is on the banks of the Little River, right here in south central Arkansas, and you can see it has a splayed thumb sticking out. And then you can see over here on the left-hand side of your picture at the top, and you'll see what looks like 3 fingers or toes drawn up, but that splay is very different. That's an 18.5-inch track right there also. That's a big track. It's about 18.5 by 10. I found that on the banks of Little River. Now that's one of the ones that I said that I sent to LA Marzulli, because Arkansas is not supposed to have, if it's not got Bigfoot, Arkansas is not supposed to have apes either. But there's your track right there. And it's, like I said, there's another picture I think you can see where I put a picture of an ape right next to a picture like that right there, and you can fold it over and you can see where the display will fit perfectly and the other 3 toes will fit perfectly. And like I said, that's on the banks of Little River in Arkansas, right there, about 25 miles north of Texarkana right there. So that is actual, I think it's some kind of primate foot. Okay, here it is. Here's the picture right here. The one on the left, I said, you can see the tape measure. You can see the splay in the foot. The picture on the right-hand side is the picture of a gorilla foot. And like I said, if you take and pretend that midline there is a piece of paper and you fold it, you're going to get the exact same outline from one side to the other. And I sent that to the man named L.A. Marzulli, because everybody says, well, there aren't any apes in Arkansas. Well, whatever that is, that's ape or Bigfoot, whatever it is. Like I said, that's right there it's 12 miles into the woods. So it ain't like somebody's out there, wearing a pair of a pair of Bigfoot thongs or flip flops or something like that. That's actually on the bank of the river right there. And then we went back a couple of weeks later and actually had the creature down there in the water, right down the bluff, and he was throwing stuff. And so when we pulled up, I peeled up over real quick and stopped real fast, and so I could get out of the truck and go back and see. And he was running up. He was down there behind the brush, but you could hear him running up the brush line. Well, then my son's sitting there, and so I did a couple of calls after he got to the top. Well, then he got mad, and then he did that 3 different times. And you're not going to scare my son because he's very much a gun expert, very much a knife expert. He went back and got his gun out of the truck because he knew right then where he was dealing with something he wasn't quite ready to deal with. But that's it right there. And you can see how the imprint of the foot and then the picture from the gorilla foot is exactly the same. So if it's not Bigfoot, and the people who say the science says, well, there's no such thing as any kind of primates here in North America, that picture is going to prove them wrong. Because, oh, well, footprints aren't any kind of evidence. Well, I've got, like I said, got some Native American friends. You show them a deer track, say, okay, what do you expect to find when you trace down the end of this track? What do you expect to find? I'm expecting to find a deer. Pretty simple. That's the same thing we would. And so that's so that is evidence. And like I said, that is legitimate.
How do you explain the difference between this track and the standard, track that looks more like a human foot but much larger?
It could be a difference in species. Like I said, not all Bigfoot are the same color. Not all of them have got the cone heads. There's some that have the round heads. Some have the shorter fingers, and that tends to be my explanation. It's possibly just a difference in the species, or it could be a difference in diet or anything. How diet affects some people the way they do. So it could be a difference in diet, but it's such an interesting phenomenon. And when you find these tracks, I found several, like I said, that's got the 5 toes to it. And man, and then also the Fount monster, the original Fount monster was a 3-toed animal. BF Bud says, I use cell cams, pick sent straight to your phone, or yes, I have tried that, and I do. They do work. The cell cams that send it to your phone, and I've gotten a lot of good pictures like that there. And that's the game I was talking about, where my wife bounces on top of me like somebody from wrestling bouncing off the top rope, because she's gonna get that picture first. Okay, this right here, it's hard to see, guys, but this is when me and my friend Daniel were there this year, the man from Alaska. And so everybody, I get a lot of criticism. Man, how come you just want to get still pictures? How come you get still pictures? Why don't you get a video? Well, this is a female Bigfoot right here. She's walking across this field. I saw her walking. I speeded up there real quick and slammed on the brakes, got out my cell phone, and she stopped. And we sit there and we probably had an 8 to 10 minute staring contest because I was wanting to get video of a Bigfoot walking. But I kept seeing something here around the midline of that red circle that you got right there moving. So anyway, I took another picture, and then whenever I did, I blew these pictures up. And so this is the Bigfoot as she walks across. You can see her right there. And boy, she's got a beautiful, beautiful coat. And it is a female, I'll tell you why. All right, and again, you can see the coat just a little better. But then at the top there, you can see the 2 black eyes sitting back here looking back at me, and she is turned. So there she is staring at me. It's not real clear because I didn't have my regular camera. I just had a cell phone. But I had a very good cell phone. And then the next picture you're going to see there, I hope it comes up to the one with the green circles on there. Go ahead, Spence. Okay, I'm gonna get back to that one. We got to go back to that. Go to the next one. I think it is, buddy. One more time. That right there. Okay, well, back had the green circles right there. You see right there, you see those green circles? You can see mama's nose. You can see the mama's dark eyes as she's sitting there staring at me. Now you look down just about a foot or so, and you'll see that baby's face, and you'll also see his eyes looking, and you'll see he's got this almost a little bitty pug nose. So that's evidently a pretty young Bigfoot. But that was taken about April the 12th of this last year. Like I said, she crossed a clear cut, and I waited and waited and waited, trying to get the daggum video of the thing walking. But like I said, they're as smart as we are. Like I said, they're as good in their element as we are. And one of the best things you can do if you don't want to be seen is stand still. And that's what a lot of the Bigfoot do. They stand there by a tree or just stand there. Same way with deer. They'll just let you go on past and they keep on with their business. So this is what this is. Like I said, Daniel was with me. He'll vouch for that right there. And I said, you can even see white on this little baby's eyes right there. Mama's eyes are black, and she's got a real, real long nose, almost like a proboscis monkey. Y'all seen that monkey that has a nose kind of like what people have? All right, go back to that one about 3 pictures ago there. Thank you, Will Spencer. Go back one more. Right Right there. Okay, what you're looking at right there, folks, if you look at it, you think, oh, well, that's just a blob. No, that is actually a Bigfoot that is laying in front of my game camera. And this dude right here, we had, they came in and bush hog and bulldozed some of the areas. So I had to rebuild. You can see kind of what kind of looks like a little white cross there. Well, that's where I would hide my candy bars. What you're looking at, you can see the black thing in the middle. That's that thing's eyes, about like a raccoon has. Above that, you can see, and you'll see a little bit closer in a minute, that is the brow ridge that you've heard about, the one kind of like what Herman Munster has. And this is actually a cone-headed Bigfoot. There, as you go across there, you can see his left foot way on back there, and then his right foot, and he's laying down on the ground. But if you look right there, just to the left of that little white cross-looking wood thing, and you can see the 4 fingers, and those fingers are wrapped around a Snickers bar. And so this thing came in to get my Snickers bar. So we got his picture from about 2 foot away. Go ahead and hit the next Spence, if you will. And then, okay, and right there, that's blown up a little closer. You can see the individual fingers, and you can see the thumb. The thumb is kind of sticking out, and it has black. Bigfoot has fingernails. They don't have claws. Bigfoot has fingernails, and you can see those black claws there on that. I mean, black fingernails on that finger right there. Also, like I said, the black thing is they don't like light. If you could blow that picture, you can't do it. I didn't see anyone close that was filtered like that, but you can actually see the eyes in that picture. But you can see all the hair, man. It looks like a piece of shag carpet up there on his head. And so this thing, like I said, is sitting there eating that candy bar. He was heck or high water, wasn't anyway, and laid there for a long time. Because when I first walked up there, I told Stephen, I said, we have a skookum cast here, Stephen. Well, skookum cast was something done by, I think, the project over in Washington. And sure enough, you can see this Bigfoot's body cast right there. And I told him, I said, we got a Bigfoot's been right here. So sure enough, that's one of the first pictures we got. So that's it right there. Like I said, you see the fingernails, and that hand is cupped around a little snack-sized Snickers bar. And that is his arm. That's his right arm. And then again, that's his eyes. And then you can go to the next Spence if you want to. Okay, again, that's Mama. Go one more there. I think I sent y'all one, but if it doesn't show up, that's fine. It's basically the same as that. It may be a little bit clearer, a little bit different. Okay, this right here, guys, is the first Bigfoot picture. It's a first picture. It's the first creature. It's not the actual first picture, the way it came in off the camera. Can you go that black and white one, Spencer?
I think so.
Okay, if you can, I'll show you this. Okay, that right there. That's the way this very first Bigfoot we ever got came in. You can see his face. He's probably about 3.5, 4 feet away. And then you can see the left hand for sure. In his left hand, he's also got a candy bar. He was the one I told you lifted it up, and we put the pressure on there, and he had to get the candy bar out. But if you look right there on the right-hand side, I'm sorry, the left-hand side corner, you'll see 3 little white marks there. Well, that's the way it came in. So I went back the other day, and I was actually doing some filtering on these pictures right here to see if I could get it better. Now, if you can go back to the one that we had before this one, and I'll show you. That right there is actually those 3 white things is actually the Bigfoot fingers. What you're seeing is the last digit of the 3 middle fingers there. And there is also right there, you can see his fingernails in there. And then you can't see the candy bar as well in the left hand. But in the right-hand side, he actually has got his hand stuck up in front of the camera so that the light doesn't affect him as bad. But that's the face right there. And that one actually, when I say not all Bigfoot look the same, that one actually has kind of a little muzzle. I'm not saying it's the Dogman type. I just think it kind of has just a little proboscis nose right there. So that's what
I was going to ask. It looks like it to me too.
Yeah, it does. It actually does. Because if I want to see you guys in person, I'm going to show you on my phone. It's going to knock you down. You're going to say, "Oh my gosh, man, you're exactly right." There's a muzzle there. Well, I said that's the difference in the Bigfoot or difference in the brand. That's a mountain Bigfoot. It's not the swamp Bigfoot or like what we have down here in Texarkana. So go ahead and go to the next one if you want to, whatever we got left there. That's the one that I said, that's my first picture. And you can see that one pretty good, but it came in black and white. But you can see the 3 digits. Okay, this right here, guys, is the picture that we got this year in April. This Bigfoot is 10.5 foot tall. And we could hear him walking, but we couldn't find him. That's when I told Daniel, start taking some grid pictures. Well, you see the face right there. You see the head. That one has actually got the big cone head to it. And you can see the deep depth of the eyes and the nose. The mouth is open, but also you can look underneath the head and you can see another hand right there. I think there's probably a baby that's wrapped around from the backhand side right there that's holding on to it. So while we're sitting there. So I said, we didn't see this right on at first. And so when we left and came back, it was already gone. But I went back a couple of days later with a meter stick and a tape measure, and got the picture. And the Bigfoot is not there in the picture. He's gone. But I was able to get to the top of the line there, and that Bigfoot was 10.5 feet tall, and he has 22-inch footprints. Boy, he's a whopper.
So you have another picture of this without the booger being in the picture?
I've got a picture of the tree without the, I took a picture of the tree without the booger being in the picture. And because I try to, if you don't police yourself to prove that what you got, man, your stuff is, it may be good, but it's not as good as it's going to be if you don't police yourself and tell the truth. My buddy Randy, man, I mean, he's not a skeptic. He just, okay, I want to see it. I want to see it. He's like, from Missouri, you got to show me. Well, I've got several buddies from Missouri, and I laugh at them right there, but I got to show. But in what thing we went down there with the Gungway. We took over 50 pictures that day. We went back up there, and he's visited this place. He goes, man, you're right. It's not there. It's not. It's only a couple of days later when Daniel went back to Alaska that I was able to get back and go. And so that booger is not there, but that booger is over 1,000 pounds, I promise you, and is right there in the middle of that tree. And I'll be glad to send that to y'all next time if I can, send you the booger without being in the tree.
Can you tell us though, like, what was the time of day? What was the time of year? Were you baiting? Was it coming to get something? Did you just happen to catch him right there? What was the backstory?
Just happened to catch him right there. It was April. Let's see. He came down on the 8th, so it's probably about the 11th or 12th. Right there. I've got it on the picture on my phone. It gives a date deal. That's about April 11th or 12th. I had put some candy bars in there. And so this thing had come in there. Like I said, it was a warm day. It was probably, 75 degrees, something like that. Just a great spring day that you want to be out in. And man, we found tracks. We found one piece of scat right there that I guarantee you, you look at these animals and if this thing, he may have walked down the hill, but he limped back up after this scat. It was the biggest thing I'd ever seen in my life. But like I said, I don't mean that crude, but I mean, the hit was just huge. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like I said, but you can't necessarily send the DNA because I don't have the money. If I tell my wife I'm going to spend $500 for Bigfoot poop DNA, she's going to take that $500 and go to the lawyer and start divorce proceedings. So, but that is, like I said, that is during the spring right there. In the spring, they're really, really active. Like I said, deer season starting about October, they're really, really active. And then November and then December. And then at the last week of February, and the first week of the month of March, the first couple of weeks of April, and about the first week of May. And then after that, they tend to want to, as we were talking about earlier about migrating, they tend to migrate out, either following their food or something like that. But these are two different areas, and it's the same thing. They have the same areas at the same time of that they leave, and they leave the tracks. Finding the tracks, man, I'll find tracks in February and March. February's not near as good, but March, man, you'll find tracks on there. I went for one day, and I don't know whether the whole clan had come through or not, but there was probably on this one muddy road down there, it's about 1.5 miles long. There's probably 70 tracks on that road that day. Man, I was just blown away. I was calling my buddy every 10 or 15 minutes, look here, and so it was really that way. But they live in what's called troops, and so most of the time that's family. Where is this at? That right there is up there, not too far, about 20 miles from Mena, Arkansas. It's actually out for one of those. Weyerhaeuser is the timber company, and so we happened to find when we found this area right there. My son was a preacher at a little town at that time when he was 18 years old, and so we would come home. Well, that night was we were coming back, and it was already during the fall. And it was, dark about 5:30. And so he preached at 6, church is over, 7, we'd be back at 7:30. Well, as we were going back, I saw, as we were coming down the highway 71 there. And I looked up there and I said, oh, Reese, I said, man, I said, we got daggum hitchhiker or somebody. I said, be sure you don't throw a rock through the window or anything else like that. Cause he's overworking on his cell phone, just looking around like, like your kids, the younger adults do. So he looked up and he just kind of glanced. Well, whenever we got up there to it, man, this thing turned around. This is a Bigfoot that's walking down the shoulder of this road. And he turned at me and I said, Reese, that's a Bigfoot. And I slammed on the brakes. And then whenever I did, of course, a little bit like that. Well, he takes off and you can see him running across the highway there through my brake lights. And coincidentally, this is the same place where I told you that Stephen had an encounter and we were going that night. And this is where I was going to take him to. Well, Stephen had an encounter up there. So whenever, like I said, we both went to the same area. I'm like, hey, man, this is going to be gold. And it has been. We've probably gotten pictures of 30 to 40 different animals or different beings up there from this one little area right there. I mean, they're just all over the place up there. And then that little lake I was telling you about, it's not too far away also. But they really tend to, you hear, if you watch the Legend of Boggy Creek, said they always travel the creeks. Well, there's probably, within a 60-mile radius of me, there's 16 rivers. And man, I have found tracks on nearly every one of those rivers right there. They do travel. It's almost like with Africa in the savannah, when your lions are sitting there and whatever comes in is going to drink. Same way with Bigfoot. If you on the water, you're going to have a better chance of finding something like that. Everything drinks. We can, all as humans, you don't live a long time without food, but they're going to have something to drink. So those rivers, I have found something in nearly every one of those rivers and several of the creeks that we have here, as well as those gravel pits I told you when I first had my very first sight.
As much as you do the fishing thing, have you had a whole lot of experience with boogers while you were fishing? Have you had the typical rock throws and everything at night while you were fishing?
I have. I had one on Lake Fork one night that, boy, I made him mad. I don't know what it was. And, but man, he was throwing sticks. He was throwing rocks. He was growling and then doing the what they call the Ohio howl type scream. Several people here on Mercer Bayou that I've talked to, they've had the Bigfoot that walked up there. One man said he was in there fishing. He heard something coming. He thought it might be somebody. So he's just sitting there looking. So all of a sudden, here comes a pair of hands, reaches through the brush, pulls it apart. And he said he's looking at a monkey face or a gorilla face. You know, I said, whether it's a gorilla or not, I'm not saying it is or it ain't. He said he's looking at a gorilla face. He said it looks at him for about 5 seconds, turns it loose. They close like a pair of curtains, and off he goes. And so I have had, like I said, that one this year when we were August 5th, the day before my birthday, and that thing was just inside the woods right there. Fishing at nighttime, you have a lot of it. Matter of fact, one thing I'll do whenever I go fishing at nighttime, a lot of time I'll shut down my motor, a lot of times turn off my lights when I know the game wardens ain't around there, and I'll do the calls and stuff. And man, when they go calling back, it's pretty daggum impressive because they really got a set of lungs on them. And it's what you're hearing on some of these shows there. Some of them are really, there's no doubt in my mind why they got his Bigfoot right there, because I've heard the same one, especially something called the Ohio house there that you have right there that came through out there with the Sierra stuff. Thank you, man. Thank you, Donna. I appreciate that. I've tried to be honest with y'all with everything I've got. And like I said, you check all my podcasts, you'll see the stories haven't changed. But you get up there with called the Sierra growls, a guy named Ron Moorhead, and it's got several recordings of these things. And I thought, oh, well, you know, that's awful convenient when I first heard them. Well, me and my son were up there deer hunting up there around Saratoga, Arkansas, and we actually got what's called the Sierra growl between he and I up there. It just, and then it reared back and did the same thing again. And man, I jump out of my chair. I'm in a little food plot, and he's in a little 10-foot ambusher stand. And I take off running towards him, and I'm scared to death. Bigfoot's done found my son. So right around the corner, I slow down, and I'm trying not to get him excited because he's like 12 or 13, right at 12 to 13. And so I walk up and say, well, it's getting dark. You ready to go? He goes, did you hear that sound? I said, yeah. He said, what was that? Oh, that's just some barred owls laughing. Y'all listen to barred owls laughing, like, wop, 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 things like that. Be 3 or 4 in a group. He goes, no, it wasn't. He said, that was that sound the Bigfoot makes on Animal Planet. So they, and you can't fool kids, man. Kids are smart. And I said, yeah, it was. He goes, Dad, what are we going to do? I said, you're going to come down out of the tree. I'm going to throw my keys down right here. And all I have was a crossbow and a 22 pistol. And I had a machete. And I said, if something comes, I said, I want you to get the keys and you get to the truck, I'll be fine. I knew I wasn't going to be fine, but I wasn't going to let it get my son. So anyway, we went on back to the vehicle. Didn't have him cause any more trouble. But the following week, the thing got after another guy. And then about 3 weeks after that, it got after 3 brothers up there. They're the very same place with the very same kind of calls. So I have had them dudes, like I said, when they call at you, and the call is wonderful, and you can call them back. My wife makes a call. I said, and it's just, man, just so perfectly in tone. If there's one around, it's going to answer her in some way. So, and again, that little megaphone that you get, and also if you go like somewhere around Cracker Barrel, there's an old train whistle that's cut out of a piece of wood, like that right there. Well, they'll answer that thing too for whatever reason. I don't know. They tend to be really, really good with that. So.
Well, we are on 2 hours, believe it or not. Show's flown by. Just so everybody knows, this is why people like William, you have to have them on more than one show, because they just got so much to go into, so much detail. I mean, I could spend a whole show just asking him questions. Please do go back and check out some of his other podcasts where he's gone into more detail on a couple of his experiences and everything. I mean, you're bound to learn a ton about the subject from it. Thanks for coming on doing the show, Will.
Man, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I've got a book written. I should have out pretty soon, and I'll let y'all know when it's there. And if anybody wants to ask some questions, if you want to have them write y'all some questions, and y'all do a show just asking me questions, I don't have to talk. I'm just kind of giving you a background of the experience I've had. You can tell I'm not pausing in it. I'm not taking time to make something up. I'm telling you what's happened, as it goes. But have them ask the questions, and I'll be glad to answer those questions. Whatever you guys want to do. But I've enjoyed being with you. I appreciate the people who listen. I know you've got other things to do besides listen to me. But I want to promote Bigfoot and the fact that Bigfoot is actually real. And we all get to heaven on Judgment Day, and you're going to look me up and say, told you so.
Do you find certain times that it seems like maybe like certain times of the year or whatever that they seem to be way more aggressive? Or
I do. I think whenever they're in the spring like that, I think they're eating the deer. The deer are breeding, and I think they're eating the deer. And I know they're eating hogs down here. The things one of them actually pulled a snake in half and left it at my buddy's truck down there, a cottonmouth snake, and just pulled it and left it there. Also, again, I think their breeding it's more maybe toward the fall, although we don't know. But at that time, they tend to be a little bit more aggressive. As well. So that they want you around, they don't want you around, they're going to let you know. I mean, you're going to get the growls, you're going to get the sticks and everything else, and it's going to scare the heck out of you. But just stand your ground and just walk away like you knew what you're doing. And it will be one of those things I think that you'll look back on and say, oh man, let me tell you what happened. And it's something that you won't ever forget. There'll be a little video loop in your mind, just like there is in mine for the first one I ever saw. I can replay that and tell you everything that ever happened right there. So
thank you, everybody that tuned in. Please hit the like button, the thumbs up, leave a comment if you would, subscribe if you would. I'm not trying to turn this into a giant mega YouTube channel. I don't care about that. I care about getting people on that I think have a lot of experience and getting accurate information out there, if there is such a thing in this field, as accurate information. Because really, it's all going to come down to our experiences and our interpretation, our opinions on it and everything. But at least for, the sake of the guests and everything, please hit the thumbs up and everything, show a little bit of support for that. But thank you very much. And I think we're going to have Chris Reinhardt on next week, which brings up, please check out Chris's channel, Discover Sasquatch. My good friend, Mark Green, he's got Cedar Creek Bottoms Farmstead Live. Check that out. As always, the Beast page, which I'm associated with, that's the home ticket right there. Please go there. Go to the Facebook page and like and subscribe on there. You can see people like William comment on there every once in a while. And I'm sure there's a bunch of other people I'm missing. Bigfoot Lake is on here tonight. He's got some really interesting stories on his channel and everything. But anyway, that's all I can think of right off the top of my head. Please have a good night. Thank you very much, and look forward to seeing everybody again next week.
Thank you.
William, do you have a Facebook page or a YouTube channel or something you want to share?
Just Facebook on there, and it's just under William Lunsford, and you'll see me sitting there combing my beard like I'm standing there with a Duck Dynasty cutout, and that's it. So just send me a message. Like I said, if I'm not in Facebook jail, I'll answer you. If not, next time I'm on there, and I try to answer everybody. Like I said, I don't mind sending some of the pictures that I have.
Wait, one last question, Will.
Yeah. Oh, did they ever finish up the camping area at Alex Smith Park? It's getting better. They've got the trails in there. I've actually seen about 6 or 7 Bigfoot inside Alex Smith Park there. They've got the trails they're cutting up there. They're cleaning it up some. The camping is great. Our county judge is doing some wonderful work with that as well. We're bringing in sometimes Boy Scouts and stuff, and it's going to be a wonderful place, and you're just allowed to have a Bigfoot sighting as there as anywhere. So if y'all get a chance, and the camping is free except for the electric. The electric they charge for, but the rest of it doesn't cost you anything, and you're right there less than a mile from Sulphur River. So do that right there. You'll really enjoy that. If you haven't been, please plan to. When you're there, go to Monster Mart and look at some of the stuff that he's got in there. I've got some casts and I've got some pictures and things in there too, but it's a wonderful experience to experience Arkansas. We're not all hillbillies, believe it or not. And those of us who are, man, we're proud to wear that title, but do come down there. And like I said, I'm glad to be with everybody. Thank everybody for listening. And y'all, like I said, again, our service people let us do all this thing. So I'm gonna bow out here and just let y'all finish up what you do. And again, please like their show. Even if you don't like me, please like their shows. These guys are good. With Beast Channel, like I said, I've actually fished with one of them boys. He probably wouldn't want me to tell you all that, but
oh no, Larry brags about it.
Larry will tell you. And Larry's good. Those are good people, and they're associated with good people, and they're going to shoot square with you too. They're not going to lie to you. I promise you, they're not going to lie to you. I take everything they said, man. I take everything they say as gospel, and not just with a grain of salt. And I love those people very much, and you guys too, man. I'll be glad to be there anytime you can get me. I'm just getting over COVID, so if I get COVID again, I'll be ready to go.
We'll get you back on.
I appreciate it, folks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure, William. Thank you.
I appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Y'all have a good night. Take care.
See y'all.